Chapter 834. Of course, she also had math homework and English homework. However, these homework were quite interesting. For example, the math homework was from 1 to 10. She had to find items that corresponded to these numbers in her life, such as a soap, 2 towels, 3 toothbrushes, and so on. It was not a boring and repetitive type of homework. While Yang Yi was reading the homework assigned by the teacher on his mobile phone, she was also looking at her father, as if she was waiting for something. But from today onwards, Yang Yi would no longer take her hand to do her homework. "Do you know what the teacher's homework means?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. She nodded and gestured with her small hands, saying, Teacher Li said. She said that she wanted to make such a big card, then write the letters on it and read it to Papa and Mom. And the little girl chattered for a while, almost repeating what the teacher said. Her memory was really good, especially the short-term memory. She could basically tell what happened that day when Yang Yi asked her to recount it. Yang Yi cleaned up the tea table in the living room. The tea table was not very useful now, so it was just right for she to do her homework. She stood aside and looked at her father curiously. She saw that he put a stack of A4 white paper, a long plastic ruler, and a long pencil on the table. "Come here." Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand. She immediately ran over, thinking that her father was going to take her to do her homework. "You can do the 3 homework here." Yang Yi patted she's small shoulder and said softly, for example, the language homework. "You can use the ruler to cut the white paper into cards according to what the teacher taught you. Then, write the few letters that you learned today in pinyin. Pay attention to the different tones." After Yang Yi said for a while, he smiled and said, "When you are done, Dad will come to see your results and listen to you read pinyin to Dad, okay? Daddy is going to make dinner now." Cici, on the other hand, became anxious. She pulled her father's hand, pouted her little mouth, and said unhappily, "No. Papa, why don't you do homework with me?" "Because you have to finish your homework by yourself. Daddy will accompany you to do your homework. How will you do your own homework in the future?" Yang Yi gently patted Cici's little head and smiled. "I don't want to do my own homework. In the future, Papa, can you accompany me to do my homework?" She said reluctantly. The little girl's mind was quite clear, and she immediately caught the flaw in her father's words. "That won't do. She, listen to Dad. Now, you are a primary school student. You are no longer a kindergarten child who relied on Dad for everything. After entering primary school, you have to start learning from the teacher. And most importantly, you have to learn by yourself and do things by yourself." Yang Yi patiently explained to Shi, for example, "You like little goldfish very much, but in class, the teacher won't teach you about it. You have to find information by yourself to learn more about little goldfish. You have to raise a little goldfish by yourself, take care of it, observe it, and verify the knowledge you have found. Didn't you already do all these when you were in kindergarten?" She pouted and nodded unhappily. "That's right. We are now just expanding the interest of little goldfish. Whether it is a poem or a mathematical formula, you can learn and study it by yourself. Didn't you just tell Dad that you already understood a lot of what the teacher said in English class?" Yang Yi said. "Yes. The teacher told us to memorize the alphabet, but I understood it all." She said. "If the teacher is talking about knowledge that you already understand, you can learn other things. For example, you only know how to speak English, but you don't know how to use a pen to write those letters and words. When the teacher is teaching the other students to read these, can you learn to write a little earlier and recite the alphabet of these words by yourself?" Yang Yi felt that he was also racking his brains. From doing homework, he had extended it to so many things. But I don't know how to write," she said in confusion. "So, from now on, we have to do every homework well. In these homework, learn to learn by yourself. If you rely on Dad for everything, it will be difficult for you to learn these things quickly. You also want to be praised by the teacher, and you also want to get a good score in the exam, right? Then do your best. Dad believes that you can do these homework well by yourself." Yang Yi waved his fist at Shi and encouraged her. She was still a little reluctant to leave. Her expression was very melancholy as she muttered, "I want Papa to help me. Dad is going to cook. Later, Xian Air will come to our house for dinner. You don't want Xian Air to be disappointed when she comes over and sees that the food is not ready, do you?" Yang Yi said with a smile, "And Dad didn't say that he won't accompany you. Later, when you finish the part that you need to do by yourself, Dad will come over and finish the rest with you. Don't you want to read it to Dad?" Hearing this, Shi felt a little better in her heart. Dad will come over later. Dad didn't abandon me. Okay then. The little girl finally nodded, although she was still a little reluctant. "Come on. When you finish, we can have dinner, and then you can play at night," Yang Yi said with a smile. There wasn't a lot of homework now. She didn't really have to choose between playing time and doing homework. After her father walked away, she sat down in front of the tea table. She rested her chin on her hand and tilted her little head. She looked worried. What should I do? Without her father by her side, she still felt very helpless. As soon as her father walked away, she found that all the thoughts in her mind were in a mess. She didn't know where to start. After a while, she calmed down a little and sorted out her thoughts. Do the language homework first. In fact, she remembered the requirements of the homework clearly. She also saw her father cut the white paper with a ruler many times. The little girl took a piece of paper. It seemed a little thick, but she didn't look at it carefully. She pressed the ruler on it. Then, she grabbed a corner of the paper and began to tear it. Oh, crash! Her right hand was slightly stronger than her left hand. She didn't know how to balance her strength. As a result, when she tore the paper, the ruler on her left hand slipped. Although the paper was torn in the end, it looked crooked. One side was big, and the other was small. It doesn't look good. She pouted. She grabbed a piece of paper with both hands and looked at her results, unwillingly. Moreover, she realized that she had taken too much. There were 2 pieces of white paper. The little girl had encountered a problem. She subconsciously turned to look in the direction of the kitchen. Her father was cooking. She could still see his back as he walked. If her father was here, he would definitely teach her how to deal with this problem. But her father wasn't here. What should she do? She was conflicted. She turned her head back and looked at Steamed Bun, who was lying next to her and loyally accompanying her. She asked softly, "Steamed Bun, do you think I should go ask Papa?" Steamed Bun heard his little master call him and lifted his head. However, he didn't understand what she said. He only wagged his tail to please her. Oh. She pouted unhappily and said, "Steamed Bun, you're not going to let me ask Papa for help either? If you don't help me, I don't like you anymore." Steamed Bun. Chapter 835. Because of some wonderful misunderstandings, she gave up her habit of looking for her father whenever she encountered a problem, and decided to figure out how to cut the paper by herself. He saw the little girl sitting at the table, looking at the paper she had just broken with a frown on her face. Her drooping eyebrows, that pitiful little appearance, made him feel particularly distressed. She tried to try again, but the effect wasn't obvious, and the paper was still torn crookedly. The card made this way wouldn't look good. She pushed the broken part to the other side of the coffee table. How did Papa do it? She tilted her little head, trying hard to recall. At this time, the little girl's extraordinary memory showed its usefulness. She remembered that when her father used to do handicraft homework with her, he would always fold the paper first. "Papa, why did you do that?" "Because after folding it like this, we can press a mark here. When you tear it, the paper will split according to this mark, and it will be neat." She's mind still echoed the conversation she had with her father. In fact, she had just casually asked, watching her father do things. If she didn't say a few words, it would be too boring. But her father had patiently answered her question. She didn't expect that after so long, the answer would come in handy. The little girl who had found a way showed a happy smile on her face, and she excitedly went to fold the paper. In order to compress the creases, she stuck out her little butt, and struggled to put all her weight on her little hands. The coffee table was quite sturdy. After a while, Shishi's cheerful cry came from the living room, "Done." The little girl pinched the 2 pieces of paper, looked left and right, and smiled with satisfaction. In fact, when she folded the paper, she didn't align the 2 corners, and the paper was a little asymmetrical, but Shishi couldn't see it. She felt it was already very neat. Shishi happily jumped out from the coffee table, hugged the inexplicably wronged Bao, and said happily, "Bao Bao, you were right. We don't need to ask Papa for help. I want to do it all, and then show it to Papa. Then, Papa will say, 'Shishi, you're really super awesome.'" "That's great." As the little girl spoke, she became intoxicated in her imagination and began to gesticulate with her hands and feet. Steamed Bun didn't know what was going on, but he didn't think too much about it. If the little master was happy, he was happy too. It seemed like he thought that the little master was playing with him, so he also jumped up and down happily, wagging his tail happily. Murphy came downstairs with Tong Tong, who had just taken a bath and smelled good. She saw Shi lying in front of the coffee table, writing and drawing with a pencil. "Shi, what are you doing?" Murphy leaned over curiously. Shi, who had been very focused just now, didn't notice. When she heard her mother's voice, she raised her head and looked at her mother with her big bright eyes. "I'm doing my homework." "Doing homework alone? Do you want Mom to teach you?" Murphy asked with concern. She hadn't communicated with Yang Yi yet, so she thought that Yang Yi was busy cooking and didn't accompany Shi. However, at this moment, Shi was very satisfied with the state of exploring by herself. Moreover, she wanted to do this homework well and get her father's praise later. The little girl waved her hands repeatedly. No, Papa said I want to do my homework by myself." Murphy raised her eyebrows in surprise and said with a smile, "Okay, then you do it by yourself." However, at this moment, Tong Tong stretched out his small body from his mother's arms, stretched out his small hands, and called in a childish voice, "Jie Jie." It was unknown whether he wanted to play with his sister or was curious about the pen or other things in his sister's hand. "We can't disturb sister from doing her homework. Let's go see what delicious food Papa made for us today." Murphy stood up with him in her arms and walked to the kitchen with a smile. After a while, when the kitchen door opened, a strong smell of meat soup floated in. Steamed Bun couldn't help but get up from the ground. He stuck out his tongue and looked in the direction of the kitchen with bright eyes. Cici was still trying her best to deal with her homework. When her father finished cooking, she had also finished her homework. As soon as she finished writing, the little girl couldn't wait to put down her pen and ran to the kitchen. She took her father's hand and said, "Papa, I'm done." Looking at her expectant eyes, she didn't know how much she wanted her father's praise. Yang Yi followed her out and looked at Shi's homework. He first looked at the top, Shi's math homework. A puppy. Yang Yi saw Shi's crooked numbers and some corresponding drawings on the paper. He pointed at the drawings and asked with uncertainty. Obviously, Shi, who hadn't learned how to write yet, used a combination of pictures and pictures to do her homework. Just like the letters she wrote before, Yang Yi also encouraged Shi to use her drawing ability to do her homework. Otherwise, how could a little girl who just started school finish this homework that required writing by herself? "A dog is steamed bun," she said with a smile. She couldn't wait for her father to guess the riddles, so she took the initiative to tell her father. Then there are 2 eyes, steamed bun's eyes, 3 cats, Xiao Guai, Xiao Hui, and Dodo. It was also difficult for her to draw the specific images one by one. Although it couldn't be said to be exactly the same, Shi's drawing ability had improved a lot over the years, especially the integration of the cartoon style. Yang Yi felt that Shi's drawings were quite recognizable. "Not bad. You did very well in your math homework. You fully used your imagination, and you drew so many drawings by yourself. Look at your 10 pillows, you even drew 10 pillows on top of them. Dad believes that you must have done your homework very seriously." Yang Yi smiled and patted Shi's little head. Now that you've finished, do you feel a sense of accomplishment? She giggled and twisted around, too embarrassed to admit it. Just as Yang Yi was looking at her homework and praising Shi, Lan Xin and her mother arrived. Murphy pressed the remote door lock of the courtyard, and Lan Xin took the lead and ran over excitedly. Xin, have you finished your homework? Yang Yi asked Lan Xin casually as he greeted Wu Jingjing. Lan Xin ran past Yang Yi and said, "What homework?" She ran to Shi's side. Yang Yi looked at Lan Xin's absent-minded appearance and already knew the answer in his heart. Today's class, the homework assigned by the teacher. She didn't do any homework, Wu Jingjing said with a wry smile. As soon as she got home, she sat in front of the TV and watched cartoons. She didn't want to move even when I called her. If it weren't for the fact that she wanted to come to your house for dinner, she wouldn't even move her butt. Yang Yi looked at Lan Xin, who was laughing heartlessly with Shi, and shook his head helplessly. Big brother Lan isn't back yet? Murphy asked Wu Jingjing curiously. Didn't he finish his meeting? Wu Jingjing smiled and pointed at Yang Yi, saying, "Then you'll have to ask your husband. He said he wants to buy an island or something and sent our old Lan to Jinling." He wants to buy an island? Murphy asked Yang Yi in surprise. Yang Yi nodded lightly and said, "Big brother Lan went to the capital for a meeting this time. I heard that there are many new policies that need to be passed. For example, private leasing of islands and land can be extended to 100 years. I discussed it with him and decided to rent the training island beside our piece of land in Jinling. It's better to develop it together." Murphy was just asking casually. She was not interested in Yang Yi's business. Chapter 836. Students, did you finish the homework I gave you yesterday? Li Ruolin didn't stand on the podium. Instead, she walked along the aisle between the seats and blended into the midst of the children. Yes. The children's responses were still a little scattered. However, there were a few activists who not only answered clearly but also excitedly raised their little hands high as if they were worried that the teacher couldn't see them. For example, Shi. There were also children who just nodded and didn't say anything. For example, Lan Xin. Li Ruolin didn't mind. She smiled and randomly picked a child next to her. "Wang Lei, can you take out your homework and show it to us?" The boy with the crew cut was stunned for 2 seconds. He seemed to be confused as to why the teacher was looking for him. He was a little nervous. As he took out the card he made, he looked as if he was crying. With tears in his eyes, he mumbled, "I did it, Teacher Li. I did it." Li Ruolin was a little frightened by his reaction. When she taught the children in the upper grades, they didn't feel wronged because of one sentence from her. And she didn't say anything serious. "Ahem, I just want to see how you did with your homework. I'm not criticizing you. Good boy, don't be afraid." Li Ruolin took over and gently placed her hand on his shoulder, comforting him gently. Li Ruolin had interacted with some teachers who had taught the first graders before. They advised her to praise and encourage them more. The first graders didn't understand a lot of things. If they could often be praised by the teacher, they would be more motivated to learn. Therefore, no matter how well Wang Lei completed his homework, Li Ruolin tried her best to pick the good parts and praised him. You can see that when Wang Lei wrote these pinyin, he transcribed it very seriously. It was written very neatly. "My father wrote this," Wang Lei said honestly. His voice was getting softer and softer. "My father said that I didn't write well." Li Ruolin choked. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this moment. Ahem. Student Wang Lei told me that these letters were written by his father and he didn't hide it. This shows that he is very honest. I suggest that everyone applaud for student Wang Lei's honesty and then learn from him. What do you think? Li Ruolin still found a way. She clapped along with her classmates. As she clapped, she looked at the teacher thoughtfully. After a round of applause, Li Ruolin smiled and handed the card back to Wang Lei. She said softly, "It's okay that Dad wrote this, but I hope you can learn to write it yourself. Just use the sitting and holding posture that I taught you yesterday. Try to finish your homework by yourself next time. You don't need Dad's help, okay? Wang Lei finally wasn't so nervous anymore. He even nodded vigorously. After passing by a few students, finally, under Shi's expectant gaze, Li Rulan walked to Shi's side. Student Yang Shi, can you share your homework with the teacher and students? In fact, it wasn't just Shi who was looking forward to showing her homework. Li Rulan was also very curious. How well did this little girl in her class, who was said to be very smart, complete her homework? Shi handed over the piece of paper that she had been holding in her hand for a long time. When the teacher flipped through it, she couldn't wait to say to Li Rulan, "Teacher, I did all these. My papa asked me to make these papers myself, but I couldn't do it well. I only managed to do it later. Then, I wrote these and I drew these." Li Rulan could see that the strokes of the pinyin letters were relatively immature. They were not written neatly and crookedly. It was obvious that they were written by Shi, who had not practiced writing for a long time. However, she preferred some of the small flowers on this piece of paper. They were all drawn with a pencil. Although the strokes were not smooth enough and the pattern looked relatively awkward, the flowers filled in the blanks on the white paper other than the pinyin letters. The layout was ingenious and looked much more exquisite. As expected of the child of a celebrity, she has very artistic cells. She has to do an ordinary homework perfectly. Li Rulan secretly sighed in her heart. Cici even pointed at the edge of the paper and stated enthusiastically, "My papa said that I didn't do it well enough, so he helped me cut here. These were made by my papa, and the rest were made by me." The paper that she made was not cut square enough. After dinner, Yang Yi helped she cut it with scissors. The 12 pieces of paper were trimmed to the same size, just like playing cards. "But you did the rest by yourself?" Li Rulan asked with some surprise. Seeing that her words had been answered, she nodded happily and said more enthusiastically, "Yes. Teacher Li, my papa gave me a ruler, but I didn't do it well at first and tore the paper. Then, I remember papa." Fortunately, Li Rulan was more patient. She listened to Shi's story of how she found a way to cut the paper. "Very good." Li Rulan smiled and clapped her hands. She raised her head and said to the other students, "Yang Shi almost completed this homework by herself. The teacher thinks that everyone should learn from Shi and learn from her hard work and serious attitude towards homework. Yang Shi, the teacher wants to ask you, after doing this homework, do you feel that you have a more thorough understanding of these pinyin and a deeper memory of them?" Li Rulan stayed with Shi for a few more minutes. When she heard this question with a complicated combination of words, she hesitated for a few seconds. After understanding it, she nodded. "That's right, that's true." Li Rulan stood beside Shi and nodded in satisfaction. She smiled and said, "Many children may not understand because when you were in kindergarten, you may not have homework." However, this time, it was Shi's turn to undermine her. The little girl looked at the teacher in confusion and said, "Yes, teacher. Our kindergarten has homework." Li Rulan nodded helplessly and said, "All right, the teacher is talking about some children. Because some children may not do much homework, they can't understand why the teacher assigns homework to you every day." Assigned homework every day? Many children in the class widened their eyes in surprise. She was also a little surprised. Homework every day? Wouldn't that mean that they wouldn't be able to play for a period of time every day? Even she was a little conflicted. She didn't like to do homework every day. How boring would that be? Li Rulan continued, "Because after you go to primary school, you will be exposed to a lot of new knowledge in the future. The teachers of different subjects will teach you a lot of lessons. With so much knowledge, after listening to it in class, you might forget it the next day. Therefore, you need to consolidate what you have learned in a day through homework. Only then will your learning be more effective." Many children, including Shi, frowned sadly. They really didn't like to do homework. Chapter 837. A primary school student's life was much more colorful than a kindergarten child's. After all, the school was bigger, there were more children, and there were more new things to do. But there were gains and losses. When the novelty wore off, she and the rest had to face reality. For example, they had to study non-stop every day and do their homework every night. Just like what Lon Xian said, if you don't want to grow up, growing up might not be a happy thing. In the conference room of a hotel in Jiangqing, Yang Yi brought along 1,000 Miles Kawasaki and Lu Chuan to attend the media meeting that Mo Xiaowan had arranged for him. Before the meeting started, Yang Yi naturally had to clarify the rumors that he had manipulated the results of China's The Voice's audition behind the scenes. But Yang Yi's few words of clarification did not have much effect. The reporters did not give up and asked, "Yang Yi, how can you prove that you did not manipulate the results of China's The Voice's audition? 1,000 Miles Kawasaki is an artist under your company. Shouldn't you avoid suspicion by not participating in the show?" I would like to correct a statement made by this friend. Yang Yi faintly smiled and said, "Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan are my friends. Although they are signed under my company's name, this contract doesn't have any restrictions. They can leave at any time." The Hua Yi brothers decided to set up this company because they were treated unfairly at Ronghua Tower. Its mission is to provide a place for my friends and family who are willing to make a living in the entertainment industry. Xiao Gua, Xiao Shu, Xiao Chuan, they are all very good friends of mine. The entertainment reporters below the stage were in an uproar. This was a big piece of news. Yang Yi had never said this to anyone before. Many celebrities and newcomers in the entertainment industry were envious of the treatment that Guazi and 1,000 Miles Kawasaki received. Because of Yang Yi's reputation, they all wanted to join the Hua Yi brothers' management company. The reporters looked at Yang Yi excitedly and thought to themselves, when this news is released, who knows how many people who want to join will cry in the toilet. "Mr. Yang Yi, may I ask if your words can be understood this way? This management company of yours is closed to the public and doesn't recruit people? No matter if it's a celebrity who has been famous for a long time, a trainee, or a new artist," a reporter couldn't help but ask. That's right. The reason why Brother Hua Yi is called Brother is also for this purpose. The original intention of setting up this company is not to make money, but to give my good friends who have dreams a management company that won't cheat them, and to help them form a management team. Yang Yi smiled. If these things were revealed, it would definitely cause a lot of controversy. Yang Yi could also predict that the media would analyze him, but Yang Yi did not care. He chose to be magnanimous and willful. At this moment, Lu Xiaoshu took the initiative to ask for the microphone and said, "I can confirm that because the company's contract does not have any restrictions on us staying or leaving, but Mao Chuan and I will not leave no matter what. Because we are good friends with Big Brother Yang, and Big Brother Yang has helped us so much. We have no reason to leave. Logically speaking, the commission that Hua Yi Brothers Company gives us is only a small, very small part. It is only used for the basic operations of the company. We can't get such treatment anywhere else, so we have no reason to leave. Can it be said that you are also determined to stay in Brother Hua Yi's company because of Yang Yi's songwriting ability?" a reporter asked sharply. Yang Yi took the microphone and said, "Let me formally introduce Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan to you. Both of them are very excellent and potential songwriters. The music they create is recognized by me. Although they haven't officially debuted yet, I can tell you that the folk music they create themselves is also quite good. You can hear it in their albums in the future. I won't deny that I will write songs for them, but please believe me when I say that you will like their original music. Maybe my songs won't be able to steal their limelight." Yang Yi smiled and said. In addition, on the stage of China's Voice, they all sang other people's songs and advanced step by step. If they did not sing their own songs, it would be tantamount to breaking their own arms. If I wanted to control the results, why would I let them only perform their own songs? Singing their own original songs is a plus. Before this, Yang Yi had already explained that he did not make any special arrangements for Qian Li Chuanshu. Even his good friend Chan Yijie, who was a mentor, did not know about the relationship between Qian Li Chuanshu and Yang Yi. "Mr. Yang Yi, can I understand it this way? If there were no shady dealings, Qianli Chuanshu might have been eliminated and might not be able to win the championship, right? A reporter asked. Yes, anyone can be eliminated, and anyone can win the championship. Please pay attention to my words. I'm not a mentor, and I'm not a jury composed of major media that may participate in the future, so I can't predict who may win the championship and who may be eliminated in the future. Yang Yi didn't let him have his way. However, Yang Yi suddenly changed the topic. But as a normal audience member, in my opinion, our team of The Voice of China is filled with talent. There are many singers with good singing and singing skills, and there are many who are even better than Thousand Miles Kawaki and the others. He was not wrong. The entertainment industry in this world was too developed. Among the singers who were not successful, there were many who had amazing abilities and even potential. Qianli Chuanshu's singing could only be considered average among the singers who had advanced. Furthermore, this was the result of them singing folk songs to a certain extent. However, Yang Yi's words still surprised many of the reporters. Why would Yang Yi say that in front of Qianli Chuanshu and the rest? He did not give them any face at all. Maybe I was a little harsh, but this is an indisputable fact. I also hope that Qianli Chuanshu and the rest can recognize the gap between themselves and others through this competition, and not fight for the championship title. Yang Yi patted Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan on the shoulders and said sincerely to the reporters, "When I suggested for them to participate in the competition, I told them that they do not care if they can win the championship or not. In this competition, they just need to enjoy the process of competing with others, and recognize their own shortcomings and learn from them. That is enough." The entertainment industry is constantly changing every day. No matter how much glory you have now, no matter how popular you are now, sooner or later, you will be replaced by someone who is more attuned to the trend. When that time comes, no one will remember that you have won any championship. All these glory are just empty words. Only by constantly improving your own abilities will you be able to guarantee your longevity. Yang Yi's meaningful words stunned the reporters. The 4 coaches on China's Top Voice are all very appropriate examples. No one will deny their singing skills, their voices, and their works. Even after so many years, everyone has forgotten the honors they once received. But to this day, their voices are still unforgettable. That's what I mean by enduring. Yang Yi smiled. Since no one wants to win the championship, why did they participate in this competition? If they participate, they will take up one of the spots for others to advance. The reporters hit the nail on the head with their questions. Because on China's Voice, it doesn't care if you're good-looking or not, what your background is, or what your past is like. It only judges your ability based on your singing. Lu Xiaoshu answered cleverly. Since it doesn't matter about your background, we naturally have the right to participate. We also want to use our voices to compete with the other contestants and see how good we are. Of course, to be able to receive the guidance of our idol, teacher Lin Qitian, is the best thing that could happen. Lu Xiaoshu's answer received applause from many reporters. Their sincerity was also acknowledged by the reporters. Actually, I didn't expect that you would choose teacher Lin Qitian. When I was watching TV at home, I even made a bet with Murphy that you would choose Chen Yijie. In the end, I lost the bet because of you. Yang Yi turned around and joked. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan scratched their heads in embarrassment. I still want to say that although I was the one who provided the idea for China's Top Voice, I still have to thank director Hong Yuman, the 4 coaches, and all the staff in the production team for giving everyone such a good viewing experience. I didn't participate in the follow-up work of the show at all. Whether it was the organization, the auditions, or the recording of the show, all of these tasks were done by them alone. Yang Yi smiled as he explained to the surprised reporters. This is also the reason why I didn't know which coach Thousand Miles Chuanshu and the others had chosen. Of course, when they advanced, they did call me to tell me the good news. But at that time, I was in America. International calls were too expensive, so I didn't tell them which coach they had chosen. The reporters could only half believe and half doubt Yang Yi's words. In the report, they would naturally have their own way of expressing themselves. However, when Yang Yi mentioned Murphy, the reporters' eyes lit up. Yang Yi, does Murphy also like to watch China's Top Voice? Chapter 838. Reporting on a small group that was not famous yet, even if they had a relationship with Yang Yi, the popularity of this news would not be very high. But Mo Fei was different. She was now a hot news topic. Especially now that news of Murphy and Yang Yi becoming famous overseas was still spreading in China. Some media outlets had even hyped up the rumor that Murphy had become an international superstar. These unverified news also attracted the attention of the audience. Therefore, the reporters took the opportunity to ask questions about Murphy. Yang Yi, does Murphy also like to watch China's Voice? Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and replied, yes, she likes this show. We did not return for the first episode, but she managed to make it in time for the second episode's premiere that night. Yang Yi, why didn't China's Voice choose Murphy as a mentor? Is it to avoid suspicion? The reporters continued asking. There are many reasons. Firstly, China's Voice has very high standards for choosing mentors. For example, teacher Lin Qitian, teacher Feng Huiwen, and teacher Luo Jian. Chen Yijier is my friend, but let's not talk about him. These three mentors are all important figures in the Chinese music industry, and their musical achievements are obvious to all. Murphy is still young after all, so she needs to learn more. Also, even if the standards were lowered, she does not have the time to participate in so many episodes of the show. Yang Yi smiled and said, there are many other reasons, but I can tell everyone that it is definitely not to avoid suspicion. Our show has always chosen the most suitable guests to give the audience the best viewing experience. Yang Yi, when will Murphy make a comeback? Does she have any plans to develop in America? The topic of the press conference had completely deviated. These are the last two questions about Murphy that I will answer. After all, today's theme is China's Voice, so I hope everyone will pay more attention to our show. Yang Yi received the note from Mo Xiaowan and quietly controlled the pace of the press conference. Murphy's comeback is scheduled for the end of the year. She hopes to use the date of her child's birth last year as the official comeback date. It's a lucky day, isn't it? Yang Yi smiled. Also, Murphy doesn't have any plans to develop in the United States. This has been explained in the studio's micro-broadcasting. Friends who don't know much about this can pay more attention to our micro-broadcasting. Yang Yi, let me ask you a few more questions. What are the plans for Murphy's comeback? A concert or a new album? The reporters were still reluctant to leave, but under Mo Xiaojuan's arrangements, the press conference came to an end. There was no need to keep Murphy's comeback a secret. It was because there was still nearly 3 months before Murphy's comeback. If they revealed everything now, it would definitely attract a lot of attention for Murphy. However, after 3 months of waiting, even the highest level of popularity would die down. Mo Xiaowan wanted to arrange the press releases properly for the next 3 months. From time to time, she would reveal some new things so that she could continue to retain the enthusiasm of the fans. After the Chinese class ended, she and her classmates welcomed their first physical education class in their lives. Because there was a physical education class today, Cici and her classmates had all put on their school uniform summer sports attire. It was a t-shirt with a blue collar and white sleeves, paired with sports shorts with a blue background and white stripes on the side. Huijia Primary School's uniforms were very expensive, but the materials used were practical. They were soft, breathable, and had a high content of cotton. It was comfortable for the children to wear, and it was also convenient for them to stretch their limbs during outdoor sports. It was September in Jiangqing, and the weather during the day was still relatively hot. It was stuffy to wear long pants during outdoor sports. Hence, she and most of her classmates wore shorts. Only a small number of children with weaker physiques wore long pants. The length of the shorts was basically around the knees. It was neither too long nor too short. She was the same. After all, her clothes were slightly bigger than the other students. However, She's legs were slender, especially her calves. When she wore the shorts, her slender calves were exposed. Compared to the other students in the class, they were obviously longer. When she stood in a row, It made the little girl look more energetic. During the first physical education class, she and her classmates were the same. They were all curious and happy as they followed the physical education teacher to the sports field. Compared to staying in the small classroom, the sports field with a wide field of vision and bright sunshine was more interesting. After a round of self-introduction, the physical education teacher, Lou Dashin, arranged the children to line up in 4 rows according to their height. He was not as gentle and kind as Ms. Lee Rulin. Perhaps it was because he had practiced physical education, but he was more straightforward and went straight to the point. Let's do some warm-up exercises first. You have to remember that the purpose of warm-up exercises is to prevent muscle strain during the exercise. Hence, you must remember to do warm-up exercises before exercising in the future. These words were so profound that many children opened their eyes and looked at Mr. Liu in confusion. She, on the other hand, understood what a warm-up exercise was. The little girl's eyes lit up. She remembered the warm-up exercises she had done when her father taught her martial arts and when her mother taught her to dance. However, the physical education teacher in front of her looked a little fierce. Although she had a lot to say and wanted to introduce what she had learned to the teacher, she still looked at Mr. Liu timidly and did not dare to open her mouth. Well, let's start from the first movement. Take your time. Lou Dashin was actually a strong man with a fierce face but a gentle heart. Compared with Yang Yi, he did look a little fierce. He knew that he was not good-looking and was not good at talking, so he did not talk much and did not explain how to do the movements. He directly showed the children the first movement of the warm-up exercise, bowing and stretching. His right leg was bowed forward and his left leg was straightened. However, Lou Dashin had improved this warm-up exercise. He also raised his arms and straightened his palms above his head. Wow! Lu Xiaoyu, who was beside Shi, could not help but exclaim, "Mr. Liu is so awesome." Not only Lu Xiaoyu, but many children also opened their small mouths and looked at Mr. Lou Dashin in surprise. Some children, like Lu Xiaoyu, shouted out their admiration. Some, like before, were still thinking about Mr. Liu's fierce appearance and did not dare to move. She was not too surprised. She was experienced and knowledgeable. Her father was much better than Mr. Lou Dashin. Moreover, even her grandfather could do more exaggerated movements. This movement is a little difficult, but it is a good warm-up exercise to stretch your muscles and prevent your muscles from straining during the exercise. Now, let's divide into 2 groups. Students in the same group will help each other and take turns to support each other to do this movement, okay? Teacher Lou Dashin looked rash, but he wasn't. He still took care of these small first-year students whose body coordination might not be good enough. He looked around and said, "In our class, boys and girls are in 2 rows. So, the girls in the first row and the girls in the 3rd row will form a group. You will form a group with your corresponding classmate. The same goes for boys." She looked ahead. She was the tallest girl in the 3rd row, so her corresponding classmate was the tallest girl in the 1st row. Wasn't that Lon Xian? Lon Xian also turned her head and looked over. When she saw that she was going to form a group with she smiled happily. Chapter 839. Bend your right leg and straighten your left leg as much as possible. Teacher Lou Dashin walked in the middle of the students. Although he didn't speak much, he was very serious when teaching. For example, when Teacher Lou Dashin passed by Wang Lei and saw that the little boy's left leg was about to kneel down, he patted Wang Lei's shoulder and motioned him to look over. He made the correct posture and pointed to the straightened leg behind him, like this. Lou Dashin needed to give the children more time to master the warm-up movements for the first time, so he patiently guided them one by one. On Shi and Lon Xian's side, Lon Xian was more relaxed. She stood in front of Shi and supported Shi's shoulder according to the teacher's instructions. However, Shi had a good sense of balance. Although she tried to straighten her hands and raise them high, she didn't stagger like the other children. Lon Xian didn't want to be too easy. The chubby little girl was still secretly happy for her little friend's posture. She tried her best to make the movements very accurate, but looking at Lon Xion's smiling face, the little girl couldn't help but smile, as if the smile was contagious. However, Lon Xion's good days were about to come to an end. Teacher Lu Dashan glanced at Shi, who did a beautiful bow, but didn't come over. He clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, "Okay, let's change. The student who was supporting the other student just now has to do this movement, and the student who was doing the movement just now can stand up and help your companion, don't let him fall." Lon Xion's smiling face collapsed. She looked down at her chubby legs and muttered, "I don't know how to do it." She had a good teammate who liked to help others. When she heard this, she immediately said enthusiastically, "It's okay, Xion Air, I can teach you. I'll help you, just like just now." However, it was difficult to make Lon Xion bend her waist. She trembled and stretched out her right leg, but she stood like this and began to raise her hand. Something didn't seem right. She looked at Lon Xion's straightened legs and blinked. She raised her head and whispered, "Xion, you didn't do the right thing. You have to do this." She even enthusiastically stood aside and demonstrated to Lon Xion. But I can't get it down. It's super painful." Lon Xion frowned and muttered. She scratched her head, feeling a little troubled. "Then what should we do?" Lon Xion was focused on slacking off. She rolled her eyes and came up with an idea. "I'll do it this way. Shi, it's your turn now." "Ah." She didn't think that much. She said in confusion, "But the teacher hasn't said anything yet. It should be the teacher who asks for someone else to do it. But I'm so tired. Shi, can you do it more?" Lon Xion stood up and hugged Shi's little hand while the teacher wasn't paying attention. "But you haven't finished yet." She didn't know how to refuse. She also wanted to help her best friend, but she subconsciously felt that it was a little inappropriate. In fact, there were many children who were as lazy as Lon Xion. Many of the children's partners weren't as serious as Shi. Their partners didn't say anything when they did it crookedly. There were even some children who stood up again when Teacher Lu looked to the other side. Fortunately, Shi didn't have to make the most difficult decision. Teacher Lu Dashan noticed the commotion. He came over and asked about the situation with concern. Shi and Lon Xion were both frightened, especially Lon Xion. Her round little face was pale, and she thought that Teacher Lu would scold her. However, to Shi and Lon Xion's surprise, Teacher Lu, who looked fierce on the outside, wasn't very strict with them. "It doesn't matter. Follow me and do as much as you can. Try to stretch your muscles and bones as much as possible. Next time, try to do better than this time. Move your right leg forward a little. Very good. Bend it a little and lower it a little. Can't do it? Can't press it down? Then stop here. It's already very good. Continue to work hard next time." Teacher Lu Dashan's voice was rough, and it was a little scary like him. However, after Teacher Lu's demonstration and guidance, Lon Xion and she gradually felt that Teacher Lu was not so scary anymore. After a series of warm-up exercises, Lon Xion was already tired and sweating profusely. She was fine. She was in high spirits. Although there were some beads of sweat on the hair on her temples because of the hot weather, the little girl had just gotten into the mood and was ready to play. "Very good." Teacher Lu Dashan applauded. In order to stimulate the children's enthusiasm, his voice was like beating gongs and drums. He was very excited but also a little rumbling as he said, "After warming up, do you feel that your bodies are much lighter? Then, let's play a little game now." Teacher Lu was indeed a little lacking in verbal expression. He learned the speaking habits of other teachers and interacted with the children stiffly. However, he forgot to give the children a chance to respond and continued talking. She opened her eyes wide and curiously saw Teacher Lu pull out a large net bag from the side. There were many basketballs in it. Yes, basketballs. All of them were normal basketballs. They did not change the size of the basketballs just because they were in the first grade of primary school. When the boys in the class saw the basketballs, there was a commotion. Sure enough, ball games were still very attractive to boys. They had long been impatient with the previous warm-up exercises. Now, when they saw the basketballs, their interest rose and their eyes began to shine. She was not as excited as them, but she was very curious. Although she had seen these things, she had not played them in person. Who has played basketball before? You can raise your hand. Lou Dashin finally gave the children a chance to show off this time. He asked a boy who had played basketball to come up and demonstrate how to bounce the ball. Originally, according to the curriculum outline, he was going to take the children to learn about lining up, running, and other content first. However, this was the first class, and he also knew that these first-grade children were not so patient. If they learned those boring lessons as soon as they came up, he was afraid that they would soon rebel. Lou Dashin, who had taught 2 classes of freshmen, was considered experienced. He decided to balance work and play, and intersperse some teaching content appropriately. Most of the time, he would take them to play and stimulate their interest in sports activities. Yes, this is the game we are going to play today. I will teach you how to bounce the ball with both hands. When the class is about to end, we will see which child can bounce the ball the most at one time, okay? Lou Dashin bounced the basketball with one hand and tried to smile at the children. Perhaps if he smiled, it would make him look less fierce. However, at this moment, none of the children were interested in his smile. Their eyes were attracted by the bouncing brown sprite. Cece was also eager to give it a try. She wanted to play this basketball and also wanted the teacher to praise her. For example, Teacher Lou said, "Wow, Shishi, you are so good at bouncing the ball. You are the best." The little girl was a little overjoyed when she thought about it. If she was praised by the PE teacher, she must go home and tell her father that she could bounce the ball. Even the PE teacher praised her. Chapter 840. It's fun to play basketball. It's not fun to play basketball. In the car home in the evening, Shi and Lon Xin had a debate on this issue. Obviously, no one could convince the other. Shi was keen on sports, but Lon Xin was afraid of these exhausting sports activities. The 2 girls chattered and shouted at each other, as if they were about to quarrel. Wait a minute. Did you learn how to play basketball in the physical education class today? You're too good. You're only in the 1st grade of primary school, but you're already learning how to play basketball. Come on, Shi, Xin Air. Tell me, how many basketballs did you shoot today? Yang Yi had to intervene and change the topic with a smile. Only 1 basketball. I played with Xin Air. She didn't understand her father's question. She said innocently, but Teacher Lou has a lot of basketballs. At this moment, Lon Xin also echoed, yes, there are so many basketballs. Teacher Lou has so many that I can't count them all. The little girl opened her hands and gestured. Yang Yi knew that they had misunderstood, but it didn't matter. He said with a smile, aren't you 2 playing a basketball? There are 60 children in your class. If you divide them by half, that's 30 basketballs. Then count how many are left on the ground and whether the teacher has any basketballs in his hands. Add them all up and you'll get the number of basketballs. He didn't know if Shi and Lon Xin could understand. Yang Yi just wanted to teach them some calculation thinking. However, looking at the 2 little girls blinking behind him and thinking in distress, Yang Yi guessed that they hadn't understood yet. Cece was still trying her best to figure it out, but Lon Xin adhered to the principle of not thinking about things that she didn't understand. Soon, she threw the thought to the back of her mind, and then said smugly, Uncle Yang, let me tell you. When we were shooting basketball, I even asked Cece to play for me. Because I'm very tired. Yeah, Xin Air doesn't like to play. She nodded. Xin Air, why don't you like to play? Yang Yi asked. Exercise is good for your health. Because I'm tired. I don't want to play anymore. Lon Xin pouted and said, the teacher didn't let me rest. I'm still tired. Papa, I'm not tired at all. When I bounced the ball, the teacher praised me. She enthusiastically said to her father as if she was asking for credit. It seemed that the little girl wanted to help her little friend share the firepower. In fact, she just had a lot of stories that she wanted to tell her father and couldn't help but steal the topic. Really? How did the teacher praise you? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Teacher Lu said that I'm very good. I'm the best at bouncing the ball among the girls. She said happily, but her tone suddenly became regretful. But I'm not a boy, because Chen Yuxuan is better at bouncing the ball. Yang Yi understood what she meant. She was saying that she couldn't compete with boys, but she was the best among the girls. That's great. After all, it's your first day of learning this. Yang Yi comforted her. Papa, at first, when I bounced the ball, I hit my nose. The ball flew up. Boom, my nose was hit. Hee hee. The little girl was still describing it vividly. Her little head was like a little chick pecking at rice. She suddenly nodded and even made the sound of a collision. After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but laugh. I was hit 3 times. Lon Xian shouted, as if being hit was a reward. I was hit only once, and I didn't get hit again. She said. Yang Yi asked with concern, does your nose still hurt? And Xian, you were hit so many times. Did you bleed? In the rearview mirror, Shishi's lips were still red and her teeth were white. There was no problem at all. She shook her head and smiled sweetly. It doesn't hurt. Hee hee, Papa, it's been a long time. Lon Xian waved her hand casually. It doesn't hurt, but I don't like to play. I let Shishi play. After returning home, Shishi was still a little unsatisfied. She wanted to play basketball for her parents. Do your homework first. Papa will buy you a basketball tomorrow. Yang Yi rubbed the little girl's head and said with a smile, we don't have one at home now. Papa, you can take me with you to buy one. I want it now. She was a little unhappy when she heard that she had to do her homework. She pulled her father's arm and acted like a spoiled child. Don't you want to do your homework? Murphy asked. The little girl pouted and didn't answer, but her expression had already revealed her inner thoughts. Papa received the homework text message from the teacher. It's not much. There's only homework for math and language. There's no homework for English today. Now you can do your homework. You can finish it before dinner in the blink of an eye. Yang Yi scratched his daughter's delicate little nose and said, if you finish your homework before dinner, you can play all night and watch TV, right? But if you don't finish your homework, you won't be able to watch Big Head Fish and Small Head Shrimp when it airs. You have to finish your homework first. Murphy played the bad guy and said seriously, I want to watch TV. I don't want to do my homework. She ground her slippers unhappily. She had to do her homework every day. Yang Yi actually knew that she would be impatient, but he didn't expect that on the second day. She had already realized the conflict between homework and playing at home. None of us want to do homework, but we have to do it, because you also want the teacher's praise, and you also want Papa to be happy for you, right? Yang Yi pulled Shi to the sofa, and the two sat side by side and chatted. Shi gently nodded her little head, but she was still a little sad. Since it's necessary to do it, but we don't like it very much, what should we do? Yang Yi said. Shi raised her little head and looked at her father with her big eyes in confusion. Yes, what should we do? At this time, we have to try our best to choose a time that doesn't conflict with our other things to finish it. For example, during the time before dinner, you usually have nothing to do, and you can only watch TV after dinner, when we come back from a walk. At this time, if we finish our homework, then we can play to our heart's content, right? Yang Yi said. Shi felt that her father's words were reasonable. Although she was still a little reluctant, she still nodded her little head. Similarly, when doing homework, there are many ways to save energy and speed up. As long as you're willing to use your brain, as long as you're focused enough when doing homework, you'll be able to finish it faster and play faster. Yang Yi said, you don't have to worry about this. Papa will slowly explore it with you, Papa will work hard with you, and strive to finish it in the shortest time, okay? Shi's words sounded easier to accept, and her father would also help her, which was very important. Her originally depressed expression now became a little happy. Then, Papa, you have to help me." The little girl looked at her father with her eyes sparkling, and said expectantly, "Well, of course, Papa will help you, because a smart person will not only work hard, but also be flexible in facing difficulties. Papa hopes that you are also a smart person." Yang Yi pressed Shi's shoulder and said in an encouraging tone, "I am a smart child." She tilted her little head and shouted, as if she was declaring something. The little girl's positive attitude came back. Yang Yi laughed. This was what he wanted to see. No matter what the results were, he hoped that she would be the same as before, in the best state and with the most enthusiasm to study. Chapter 841. Yang Yi didn't only educate his daughter endlessly. After educating her, he still had to coax her. "I don't want to sit here." Cici, who had agreed to do her homework obediently, stood at the side, pointed at the coffee table, and said with a pout, "The teacher said that our heads and shoulders must be straight, our bodies must be straight, our backs must be straight." Wow, she even recited the teacher's words, as if she was blaming her father. Obviously, although she accepted her father's words, she just figured out the general principle, but she was still unwilling to do her homework. There was a little resentment in her heart, and at this moment, she needed to vent it out. Okay, Dad will change the table for you right away. Upstairs, in your bedroom, there is a desk and chair that Dad bought for you to do your manual work, a very standard desk and chair for doing homework." Yang Yi said with a smile, and then he swaggered up and moved the desk and chair down for Shi. "Is it okay? I think this desk is very good." Yang Yi pulled out the small chair, sat down in a very gentlemanly gesture of welcome, and said to Shi with a smile. Shi's little resentment came inexplicably and disappeared inexplicably. At this moment, she looked at her father's posture of invitation, and could not help but giggle. Her smiling eyes were like crescent moons, conveying her joy at this moment to her father. On Wednesday afternoon, Cici, who had just finished a new day of classes, saw her father again. Yang Yi pretended to be calm and took Shi and Lan Xian back to the car. When he sat in the driver's seat, his voice suddenly became very tempting. "Shi, look, what is this?" Shi and Lan Xian both looked forward, and immediately, Shi's excited voice sounded in the car. Wow. Papa, basketball. Dad didn't break his promise, right? Yang Yi said with a smile, "Dad bought you a basketball." Yeah. In her baby seat, the little girl could not help but twist happily. She wished she could break free from the seat belt and run to the front to hug the ball. She even sweetly called out, "Papa is super good." Not just basketball. Yang Yi pulled out a big bag from the passenger seat and rummaged through it. As he showed it to Shi, he said with a smile, "There are also table tennis rackets, badminton rackets, and badminton rackets. Dad guessed that you might need them in the future, so he bought soccer balls and volleyball." It was rare for Yang Yi to go to a sports store, and he almost moved the store back. My papa is the best." She nodded with satisfaction, and her praise for her father was upgraded. After all, super couldn't be compared to the most. "I want to play basketball with Xin Air," she said excitedly to her father. "I don't want to play basketball. You play. It's too tiring to play basketball." Lan Xian did not have much interest. She shook her head and said, But I'm in the same group as you." She said in distress. Cici didn't play basketball because she liked it, but because she enjoyed the comfortable feeling of playing outdoors. It was because she could laugh and play with other children, which made this little game very interesting. How boring it would be to play alone. "But I don't want to play." Lan Xian maintained her last stubbornness. She pouted and shook her head. She was a little disappointed. She wanted to invite Lan Xian to play with her after she had a basketball. Yang Yi did not let Shi down. After returning home, he took the basketball and took Shi to the yard. While the sky was still bright, he played basketball with her. "Today we can eat a little later, exercise a little, then do homework and cook, okay?" Yang Yi smiled, gently hit the basketball on the ground, and passed it to Shi at a moderate speed. The little girl was very smart. She did not take the ball directly, for fear that her delicate little nose would be hit by the ball again. She nimbly dodged to the side, and then chuckled and chased after him. She awkwardly hugged the basketball that was bigger than her head. Only then did she have time to answer. She also mischievously shouted, "Papa, I want to cook, and then you help me do my homework, okay?" Hee. You know how to cook. I don't believe it. Yang-yi deliberately shook his head disdainfully. She thought that her father believed her. The little girl chased the basketball that she sent to her father, and embarrassedly stuck out her small tongue. Hee, Papa, I was joking. I don't know how to cook. The fun of shooting a basketball is not as good as passing the ball. Shooting a basketball is a solo. Passing the ball is the interaction between two people. She was soon immersed in the game of passing the ball with her father. She did not have her father's ability to control the basketball with one hand. Every time the little girl threw the basketball, she had to raise it high. Even if she was born with divine strength, she had to use all her strength to throw it to her father. Yeah. After half an hour, the little girl threw the basketball in her hand again. She played until her face was red, her forehead was sweating, and her small mouth was panting. But she was having fun, as if she did not want to stop at all. Steamed Bun, who was having fun, did not want to stop either. This guy might have heard the noise and ran out of the house to participate in the game between the big master and the little master. It could not bite such a big basketball, but Steamed Bun was not discouraged at all. It chose to quickly catch up with the basketball, and even went around to the front of the basketball, and used its head to head the ball back. Generally, it was only when Shi missed the ball that it had room to play. The big master threw it very well, and Steamed Bun would not snatch it from the little master. Most of the time, it just happily jumped around with the flying basketball. But even so, the little guy was still having fun. It was the first time in its life, 1.5 years old, that it played a ball. Steamed Bun, quick, Steamed Bun, you're great. It liked the little master's happy cries and praises after it caught the ball. This was one of the few expressions that Steamed Bun could understand. After Yang-yi explained the original intention of his Hua-yi Brothers company in front of the media's evaluation of Yang-yi was not consistent. There were praises, and some media even praised Yang-yi to the heavens, saying that he was the most conscientious boss in the entertainment industry. There were also those who were skeptical. Many media outlets were questioning the credibility of Yang-yi and Qianli Chuanshu's words, because according to Qianli Chuanshu, Hua-yi Brothers still had a commission for them. However, there was no specific number for this ratio. Who knew if they were acting? There were even more voices of criticism. Yang-yi's statement to a certain extent reflected that most agencies in the entertainment industry had unreasonable terms in their contracts with newcomers. Although Yang-yi only expressed his attitude towards his friends, it undoubtedly touched the interests of other agencies. Their relationship with the media was complicated, so naturally, many media outlets were willing to jump out to help them criticize Yang-yi. Some said that Yang-yi's thinking was too naive, and that a company without strict rules would not last long. Some said that Yang-yi underestimated the complexity of human nature. Yang Huan was still fine, but now the entire entertainment industry knew that Guazi and Qianli Chuanshu had no restrictions in their contracts with their agencies. These people would be poached by some large agencies sooner or later. Some also said that Yang-yi was just creating his perfect persona, the most considerate husband, the brother who took care of his sister the best, and the boss who treated his brothers the best. The entertainment industry was very complicated, and there were many disputes of interests. It was useless to just shout slogans, and it was useless to just run the company with benevolence. Hua-yi Brothers would definitely not be able to develop, and Yang-yi's perfect persona would collapse sooner or later. The media's criticism of Yang-yi could be described as harsh, but even though it seemed that a war was about to break out in the entertainment industry, Yang-yi disappeared without a trace. He did not respond to the doubts and criticisms of others. Because he did not care at all. Yang-yi had already had a premonition about these counterattacks when he told the situation of the Hua-yi Brothers. Mo Shaowan had also warned him, but he did not care, so he said it openly. In the overwhelming wave of condemnation, the protagonist seemed to be uninvolved. This made some of the fierce-looking media outlets feel as if a basin of cold water had been poured on their faces, and their enthusiasm could not be ignited. On this day, in Shanghai, there was a new internet media studio called Urban Entertainment Reporter. A young man biting a pen suddenly had his eyes lit up and ran excitedly to the chief editor's office. "Chief editor, I know what news about Yang Yi can attract the most attention." "Salted egg, what did you say?" The chief editor pushed up his glasses. Chen Dan clenched his fists and said excitedly, "We can write about Yang Yi's current net worth." "Didn't he say that he didn't need the Hua Yi brothers to earn money for him? This means that he must be very rich, but no one knows how much money he has. Didn't the previous reports always give people the impression that Yang Yi was a poor boy who married a rich singer? In just a few years, he went from being poor to being the boss of a management company. This matter must be very inspirational, and people are eager to know how rich he is now." "You're right, this is a very selling news." The chief editor also felt that Chen Dan's idea was not bad. He patted the table and stood up excitedly. "Hee hee." Chen Dan stood there and laughed proudly. This idea was a sudden idea, but it was indeed very explosive. Now that the chief editor had approved of him, how could he not be proud? Thinking about it, it seemed that a promotion, a raise, a general manager, a CEO, and a marriage with a rich and beautiful woman wasn't far away. However, Chen Dan, you have to check carefully how much money he has earned in the past few years. The chief editor did not disappoint Chen Dan. He patted Chen Dan's shoulder and encouraged him, "If this report is done well, there should be a lot of people reading it. When the time comes, our company's bonus will not be missed." Chen Dan nodded and said proudly, "Don't worry, chief editor, leave it to me." Chapter 842. She gradually adapted to her identity and life as a primary school student. Yang Yi and Murphy finally had some free time and could continue their work. At present, their main job was to prepare for Murphy's new album when she returned at the end of November. On this day, in Yang Yi and Murphy's exclusive recording studio at Phoebe Studio, Yang Yi, Murphy, and Jean Ing-ming sat in their chairs, forming a circle with Mo Xiaowan, who was leaning on the console. It wasn't that there was no place for Mo Xiaowan to sit, but this pretentious unmarried girl said that she wanted to lose weight, slim her butt, and refused to sit. "I think that the new album for the return must have enough weight to form a certain market influence. Because Sister Fei hasn't released a new album for 2 years, this time it must be a hit." Mo Xiaowan clenched her fists and said valiantly, "This is definitely necessary. What we need to study is whether to add previously released singles in the new album," Jean Ing-ming said. In fact, not to mention the use of previous singles in the new album was also mixed with songs used in the past album. These small tricks were everywhere. The most common way was to take the old songs that were very popular in the past and match them with a few new songs to sell as a new album, called a Golden Song Special. Of course, what Jean Ing-ming said was another way to do it. After all, the songs that Yang Yi wrote for Murphy in the past were all released as singles. There was no lack of quality among these songs, and many of them were even songs that others dreamed of. If they weren't included in the album, Jean Ing-ming would feel that it was a waste. "Old Jean, we have already released songs, so there's no need to mix them into the new album." Yang Yi laughed. "Xiaowan is right. Since it's a return album, we have to do a better job and use all new songs to show our sincerity. But we have to write 12 new songs." Jean Ing-ming looked at Yang Yi with some worry. Although he didn't say what he was going to say next, his eyes revealed his thoughts. "Just 2 months. Can you do it?" At this moment, Mo Xiaowan hesitated and said, "Sister Fei, brother-in-law, actually, we don't have to let brother-in-law finish writing so many songs. According to the practice of many management companies, we can ask other songwriters for songs." Murphy looked at Mo Xiaowan in surprise. She was already used to singing songs written by Yang Yi, so she couldn't quite wrap her head around it. "You're asking for a song from someone else?" "Yes, I have my reasons for making this suggestion," Mo Xiaowan said seriously. Yang Yi asked curiously, "Tell me about it." As early as a month ago, Xiao AI released a survey on our studio's official micro-broadcast. It asked the fans which types of songs Sister Fei sang were more popular. This survey is actually a small interactive activity. They hope to mobilize the enthusiasm of fans and promote the sales of songs through this award-winning survey. Mo Xiaowan also explained a lot. I know about this activity. You also asked me to write postcards to a few lucky fans who won. Murphy smiled. What's the result of the survey? Yang Yi also had a strong interest in Mo Xiaojuan's story. You definitely can't guess the result. Fans are more interested in sad songs like Listen to the Sea and Come Across the Sea to See You, sung by Sister Fei. More than 50% of fans voted for this option. The rest of the fans like to listen to sweet love songs. There are also some who want to listen to Chinese, Cantonese, military songs, and other types of songs. The proportion of the latter is very small. Mo Xiaowan said. Yang Yi froze for a moment. He touched his chin thoughtfully. In addition, we found that a large number of fans suggested to us that it would be a bit boring to listen to too many sweet love songs. They hope that Sister Fei can sing some other types of songs. Mo Xiaowan said, when Love of a Lifetime was released, many musicians, such as teacher Li Shijian, made similar comments. Jin Yingming still had an impression of Li Shijian's music reviews. When he heard this, he could not help but nod and say, indeed, you should try some other types of songs. Otherwise, it's easy to limit your singing style to a small range. Just like Feng Huiwen of China's top voice. She used to be called the Queen of Sweet Songs. Everyone's impression of her was only sweet songs. In fact, she also sang other songs, but they were not popular. Yang Yi understood. He said with a smile, I know. What you mean is that Murphy sang too many love songs I wrote about the sweetness between us. I'm worried that fans will categorize Murphy as a queen of sweet songs. But Xiaowan, you're underestimating me too much. Yang Yi smiled and pointed at Mo Xiaowan. He said, I don't only know how to write this type of song. I can also write other types of songs. If you want to be sad, you can also write about it. Otherwise, why would Listen to the Sea be born? But your experiences are different now. You're living a happy life now. There's no sadness like before. Didn't your songs change their style and become the type of songs that show affection every day? Mo Xiaowan said with some resentment towards the end. Yang Yi shook his head and said with a smile, haven't you heard of a poem called, In order to write a new poem, one has to express one's sorrow? Mo Xiaowan shook her head in confusion. Murphy had not heard of it either. Jin Yingming, who had a higher reading level, could not help but ask, what poem is that? I've never heard of it either. Yang Yi then remembered that there was no mission for old Xin in this world. He smiled and waved his hand, saying, well, that's not important. What I mean is that the creation of music does not necessarily require the same experience to create a song with a certain emotion. It's just like writing a novel. Sometimes, their creation also requires imagination. With some imagination, you can immerse yourself in a certain simulated emotion. Then, this type of song can be written. Murphy pulled Yang Yi's hand. She did not want Yang Yi to torture her too much. She said, actually, I think it doesn't matter what type of song you sing. And I think that singing a love song that belongs to us will make me very happy. But I know that you actually like to sing sad love songs. Last time, when I sang Love of a Lifetime, you were immersed in it. Other songs are not so attractive. Yang Yi pressed Murphy's shoulders with both hands, not letting her deny it. He said softly, don't worry, writing a few songs is not a big problem for me. You can write sad love songs? Then you should have said so earlier. We don't need to find people to write songs for us anymore. Mo Xiaowan said. Not only can I write, but what I write may not necessarily be worse than Listen to the Sea. In front of his own people, Yang Yi boasted confidently. Just wait and see. Chapter 843. Of course, before making the new album, Yang Yi not only wanted to know the suggestions of Mo Xiaowan and Jin Ming, but also wanted to know the preferences of his fans. He also needed to consider Murphy's opinion. After Yang Yi asked, Murphy pondered for a while and said, "What I want to sing the most? In fact, I don't care much about the type of songs. Relatively speaking, I prefer to sing some challenging songs that are not so easy to sing well, such as Listen to the Sea and Love of a Lifetime. I prefer these songs that have higher requirements for singing. That means it's more difficult to sing. I've tried to sing the song Love of a Lifetime, but I can't sing it like Yang Yi." Jin Ming couldn't help shaking his head and sighing. "I really don't understand how you can sing it. If you can change the shape of your voice in a special way, you can also sing a variety of different songs." Of course, Yang Yi didn't say that. He smiled and said to Jin Ming, "Every song has thousands of ways to interpret it. You don't have to learn my singing. You can sing it well yourself. The problem is that I don't sing well myself. I like to listen to your version." "Sorry, Murphy, I'm not targeting you." Jin Ming felt that something was wrong halfway through his words and quickly changed it. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. She waved her hand, indicating that she didn't care. "You men's views are still different from ours. Xiao Ai and I like the version sung by Sister Fei." Mo Xiaowan joined in. Yang Yi was still thinking about what Murphy said when he suddenly remembered a song that was recognized as difficult to cover in his previous life. If it were another song, he wouldn't have taken it out immediately, but this song was really interesting. Whether it was the lyrics or the singing, they were all very special. So, he took the cardboard from the table next to him, took out a pen, and wrote on it. Several people saw the movement and thought that Yang Yi was inspired. They all stopped talking and didn't dare to interrupt Yang Yi's thoughts. Only Murphy could go over and read what Yang Yi had written. "Why is it that the stronger the wind, the more my heart flutters, like a speck of dust dancing freely in the wind?" Murphy couldn't help but widen her eyes and open her mouth in surprise after reading these few sentences. This lyric is very unique. She didn't know why, but just by looking at it, she felt a kind of magical attraction. Murphy couldn't help but like these lyrics. Perhaps the feelings of freedom expressed in these lyrics were very special? Murphy was not a person who yearned for freedom. On the contrary, she did not like her life to change too much. If she was like other female celebrities who yearned for freedom and rock and roll, Yang Yi would probably have sung Miss Dong. But when she was singing, Mo Fei liked the feeling of freedom expressed in the lyrics of the song. Just like Listen to the Sea, the voice was raised high and then dropped down. This feeling of freedom in playing with the rhythm was very fascinating. So, when she read these lyrics, it was as if she had become a speck of dust, being thrown around in the wind. The rhythm of the music here should also be endlessly high and floating. Murphy was lost in thought. After writing the lyrics, Yang Yi hung it on the whiteboard in the recording studio. "Yang Yi, is this an improvised song?" Jin Ming couldn't hold it in anymore. He didn't wear glasses today, so he excitedly walked up to the whiteboard and looked at it. "This song was inspired before, but I didn't finish it because it's a bit difficult. Murphy can sing it, but the audience may not be able to sing it. It has a wide range. The main song is between G3 and G4, but the chorus is raised by a whole octave, between G4 and G5. It can be considered as one of my experimental products." Yang Yi chuckled and said casually, "Today, Murphy mentioned it, so I took it out for you to see." Jin Ming touched his chin and said, "I don't know how well it's sung, but your lyrics are very interesting. Look at the end of each line, it doesn't rhyme completely, or it basically doesn't rhyme at all. But from the content of the lyrics, the imagery and mood are very strong, and it has a special sense of déjà vu." Mo Xiaowan couldn't wait. She looked at it from the side and found a chance to interrupt. "I don't think there's a need to say so much. Let's listen to brother-in-law sing it first. As for how the song is like, we'll have a rough impression after listening to it once. This song, if sung by a male voice, will be a bit worse, but I can hum it once for you to listen to and use it as a reference." Yang Yi didn't refuse. After thinking for a while, he began to hum. Keep going in the direction where the wind blows, go. Blow, 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 my pride and indulgence. He had learned the singing style of Shah Baoyong in his previous life. The main part of the song was calm and had a desire for freedom, while the chorus was high and had a trace of struggle. It had to be said that for a male voice to sing this song at Shah Baoyong's level, it was already pretty good. Due to the limitations of his gender, Yang Yi was destined to be unable to imitate the original song. In his previous life, the reason why Su Yuning's singing was described as ear-scratching was not only because of her vibrato, but also because of her unique singing style that couldn't be separated from her own voice. This was something that Yang Yi couldn't imitate. Murphy might be able to do it, because her voice was indeed very good. As a woman, she could imitate many different female voices, such as ethereal, hoarse, or unruly. Yang Yi's imitation was much worse. Of course, what was even more fascinating was Su Yuning's casual and improvisational style in the original song. But even if Yang Yi couldn't imitate the original song, his unaccompanied humming was enough to make Murphy, Ji Ning-ming, and the rest intoxicated. There's actually such a song. After Yang Yi finished singing, Ji Ning-ming couldn't help sighing. When I saw the lyrics that you wrote, I already felt that it wasn't ordinary. Now that I've listened to it, it's even more special. How special is it? Mo Xiaowan curiously asked. She felt that it was pretty good, but she couldn't tell what was so special about it. Ji Ning-ming smiled, pointed to his head, and said, "It's special because I thought about it for a long time just now, but I couldn't find a template that matches it. In Chinese music, there is no song that is similar to its singing style. That's why it's special." Even Love to Work Hard to Win wasn't that special, because although the tune of Love to Work Hard to Win was also very ear-catching, it could still be classified as an old song. Many songs that circulated in Nanyang had similar rhythms to it. But Wild Child really didn't have a corresponding template. Not to mention this world, even in Yang Yi's previous life, it was the most special. Even after it was released, no one could imitate the same style of song. Yang Yi still hoped that Murphy could sing the original song, or even surpass it. So he said to Murphy, who still wanted to hear more, "When singing this song, don't sing it like me. You have to imagine that you're really a leaf that's being blown by the wind. First, break all the melodies, mess it up, and then find your unique rhythm." "I want to try." Murphy was a little itchy. She looked at the recording room in the recording studio and said eagerly. She definitely couldn't sing this song well in a day or two. During the time when Yang Yi was writing songs for her new album, Murphy had her new toy. Chapter 844. When they went to school, many students would have a question. Is the school unwilling to spend money to hire a cleaner? Why is it that we students have to do the cleaning work every day when the cleaner can do it? Even if the school arranged duty for the students, there was still a reasonable excuse to cultivate the student's sense of responsibility and self-care ability. However, this kind of question had never been cut off in the minds of the children. Fortunately, the current she was still young. She was still at the age where she would only listen to instructions and not ask why. As a matter of fact, on Thursday evening, it was she's turn to be responsible for cleaning the classroom and the school's area of responsibility. 4 students were left to clean the classroom, while she, Lu Xiaoyu, and the other 4 students were arranged by teacher Li Rulin to sweep the fallen leaves in the pavilion of the school. "Let's go to the tool room to get the cleaning tools first. After we get them, remember to return them to the old man in charge of registration." Li Rulin took the 6 ignorant children and taught them step by step how to learn how to sweep the floor from scratch. Li Rulin took 4 fluffy miscanthus brooms and 2 dustpans. It had to be said that these brooms were taller than the children and each tool was heavy. For the first-grade children, it was not a small challenge. However, to Li Rulin's surprise, the children were very excited and began to fight over them. Although it was a bit difficult to lift the heavy tools, they still excitedly grabbed their respective tools and waved them around with all their might, as if they were great generals holding the green dragon crescent blade. Li Rulin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she stopped them. "All right, stop playing with the brooms. What if you hit others? Let's go sweep the floor." Even though the teacher shouted for them to stop playing around, the children were still very excited and chattered noisily along the way. Our brooms are not like this. Our brooms are very light. I don't even have to use much strength to hold them, Lu Xiaoyu said to Shi. However, Shi had a different opinion. Our brooms are also this big. My grandfather's brooms are even bigger. Super big. Wow. Why do they need such a big broom? I can't even lift it, Lu Xiaoyu asked in surprise. Because they had a big courtyard. However, Shi didn't know the reason. The little girl giggled and said something without any substance to her friend. Although they couldn't solve the problem, the two still chatted happily. She was very strong. She was the only one among the 6 children who could easily handle the weight of the broom. The other 3 boys with brooms were having a hard time. Lu Xiaoyu had already swapped the broom with a boy's dustpan. Little Fishy was not as strong as Shi. Girls were delicate and weak, so there was no way she could play with such a heavy and bulky person. Young Shi, lend me your broom for the teacher. When they reached the place, Li Rulan took the broom from Shi's hand and demonstrated to the children how to sweep the leaves and trash. You have to sweep these together first. You don't have to sweep too much at once. For example, if we sweep such a small area, we can call the student with the dustpan over and sweep the trash into the dustpan. Xiaoyu, come over here. Yes, you have to press the dustpan like this. After cleaning it up, you can dump the trash that has been swept into the trash can over there. Li Rulan was very careful and gently taught the children the steps and processes. However, not every child could be like Shi, staring at the teacher with wide eyes. 2 mischievous boys looked at the teacher halfway and couldn't wait to grab the broom and sweep it left and right. In fact, they were like peacocks who were trying their best to show off their beautiful wings in front of the opposite sex. They cried out loudly and swung the broom with the momentum of sweeping away 1,000 troops. In the end, leaves flew everywhere and dust flew everywhere. The 2 little girls, Shi and Lu Xiaoyu, who loved to be clean, hurriedly ran away and stood far away from them. All right, everyone, let's work hard together and try to finish sweeping the ground here as soon as possible. Li Rulan helplessly made a hasty ending and turned around to teach the 2 little guys who were a little naughty. At home, sweeping the floor was her father's job. The fallen leaves in the yard and the bushes were taken care of by a special property management staff. This was the first time in Shi's life that she had swept the floor. Therefore, the little girl also excitedly played with her little friends. I want to sweep this place. It's a super big place. She fiddled with the broom and pointed at the area beside the checkered tiles and the flower bed. She giggled at Lu Xiaoyu and said, "Then you sweep in with me in your shovel." She was very focused on sweeping the floor, but her posture was a little wrong. She held the handle with both hands, as if she was holding a hoe. She waved it left and right awkwardly. Fortunately, Shi was stronger and full of enthusiasm. After sweeping for a while, the little girl gathered a piece of trash with great effort, but she didn't realize the problem. Shi had listened to the teacher's explanation just now, but she was more focused on how to cooperate with her friends and ignored how the teacher held the broom. Fortunately, her little friend had been arranged to sweep the floor at home before. Lu Xiaoyu stood aside and watched for a while. She scratched her head and said hesitantly, Shi, this is not how you hold the broom. You have to hold it upright. Hold it upright? What kind of hold it upright? Shi looked at Lu Xiaoyu in confusion. Little you, I don't understand. It's. Hey, I'll show you. Lu Xiaoyu had to put down her dustpan and ask Shi for the broom. She put it upright in front of her with some effort, then held the broom with her right hand and left hand, showing Shi the correct way to hold a broom. Shi tried again. Sure enough, it was much easier this time. Wow, little you, you're so awesome. Shi shouted happily. He. Lu Xiaoyu smiled sweetly. The 2 simple-minded girls smiled brightly under the warm afternoon sun. It was a feeling of pearls shining on jade. Shi swept the floor, and Lu Xiaoyu took the trash and threw it out. The 2 girls cooperated very well. Teacher Li Rulin came over and praised them for their efficiency. Compared to the boys who played around after working for a while, Shishi's performance couldn't be better. Li Rulin secretly sighed in her heart. It's said that the children of celebrities are arrogant and domineering. Now it seems that it's not entirely true. The arrogance and domineering in her heart was an incident a few years ago where the son of an old celebrity drove without a license and beat up others with his friends. This incident caused a sensation and caused the public to denounce the second generation of celebrities. Li Rulin didn't care much about the entertainment industry, but she still had a deep impression of this news. Shishi was different. Li Rulin found that the daughter of a celebrity in her class was not arrogant and domineering. Instead, she had a good temper and was willing to make friends with other students. She was also very polite to the teacher. Today, Shishi actively participated in the work, which made Li Rulin feel even more incredulous. No wonder the news said that Yang Yi and Murphy's family is very low-key and is a model family. This pair of celebrities must spend more time with their children than they do working, right? They've raised their children to be so well-behaved and sensible. Li Rulin could rest assured and let Shi and Lu Xiaoyu sweep the floor by themselves. She only needed to look after the other 4 brats. However, it would be great if today's sweeping went smoothly. Chapter 845. Shi, you're so strong. Lu Xiaoyu was a little tired after running back and forth a few times. She looked enviously at Shi, who was waving the big broom with ease. Really? Xian also said that I'm super strong. Shi said happily, but Chen Shuyun is also very strong. Her papa is a boxer. He's super strong. Who's Chen Shuyun? Lu Xiaoyu asked curiously. Before Cici finished her words, she continued, but her papa is very powerful, but my papa is even more powerful. My papa defeated the big bad wolf and saved Hua Hua. Hua Hua is a very cute deer. If she continued talking about this topic, there would be no end to it. Fortunately, she stopped in time. She said with a smile, "Oh, little fishy, I forgot that you don't know Chen Shuyun yet. Chen Shuyun is my good friend, just like Xian. But she's not in our class. She's in class 8. Let's go play with her together next time." She was chatting with her friends in full swing, so she didn't pay attention to the environment around her. On the flower bed behind her, there was an iron wire that was used to fix the flagpole a few days ago, but it was probably missing. It was hanging there shakily. When the little girl swept the floor, she stepped back step by step. As she chatted with Lu Xiaoyu, she stepped back unsteadily. Suddenly, the hem of her shirt was caught by the iron wire. With a tearing sound, Cici subconsciously turned her little head and stared blankly at her clean white shirt that had been torn open. What's going on? She didn't react yet. Lu Xiaoyu poked her little head and said in surprise, "Wow, Shi, your shirt is torn." Yes, she also saw it. The little girl realized that her shirt was really torn, so she panicked. It was the first time she encountered such a situation. In the past, even if her clothes were dirty, they were never torn. The little girl didn't know what to do for a moment. She was confused, self-blaming, and worried. Lu Xiaoyu was more enthusiastic. She threw down the dustpan and went to help Shi pull the iron wire that was still hooked on it. Then she smiled and said, "Okay. It's off. But my shirt is still torn." She was not happy at all. She gently pouted her little mouth and reached out to grab the hem of her shirt. There was a finger-long tear, so big that she could fit her little palm. Her shirt was torn. It wouldn't look good. Yeah. What should we do? Your clothes are torn. Lu Xiaoyu also curiously glanced at him and said, "This was a good question." She also wanted to know what to do. "I don't know what to do either." She lowered her little head. Her 2 little hands grabbed the hem of her shirt as she said in a muffled voice. Now the little girl was panicking. She was worried that her parents would blame her for tearing her beautiful school uniform. Shi, who was originally in a bright mood, was now frowning with worry. This helpless look made people feel pity for her. Li Ruolin inadvertently turned her head and happened to see the gloomy atmosphere. Something was wrong. Moreover, Shi and Lu Xiaoyu's cleaning tools were on the ground. She thought that the two girls had a conflict. She quickly walked over and asked with concern, "What's wrong? What happened?" Lu Xiaoyu raised her little head. When she saw Teacher Li Ruolin, her eyes lit up. She excitedly said to the teacher, "Teacher Li, Shi's shirt was torn by this thing. What do you think we should do?" Shi was still a little worried. She raised her eyes in low spirits and looked at the teacher. Only then did Li Ruolin understand. She anxiously lifted the hem of Shi's shirt and asked, "Other than your clothes being torn, are you hurt anywhere else? Young Shi, were you scratched by this iron wire anywhere?" Shi looked at the teacher in confusion. She hesitated for a moment before saying, My clothes were torn. The teacher is asking if you were scratched. Do you feel any pain anywhere?" Li Ruolin checked Shi's back. She didn't see any wounds, but she was still worried and asked. Shi understood this time. She shook her little head. "That's good." Li Ruolin's worried heart relaxed a little. Being scratched by these rusty iron wires was not a small matter. These children had delicate bodies. If they were injured anywhere, they would inevitably be tortured by tetanus needles. However, Li Ruolin noticed Shi's sad look. She smiled and said, "It's okay if your clothes are torn. After everyone finishes sweeping the floor, the teacher will take you to the office and mend it for you." Shi blinked her big eyes and asked doubtfully, "It's still okay, is it done?" The little girl also had no concept of mending clothes. At home, Yang Yi and Murphy were not the kind of people who were diligent and thrifty. After a while, Shi followed Teacher Li to the first grade office. It was a place where the teachers could rest, grade homework, and prepare for lessons after the two classrooms were connected. This was the first time she had been here. The little girl followed behind Teacher Li timidly, but her big eyes looked around curiously. There were still some teachers who stayed in the office to work. However, she didn't recognize them and didn't dare to greet them. Isn't this Big Ming? Cough. Student Yong Shi? Teacher Li, why did you call her to the office? Did she do something wrong?" Finally, a familiar voice was heard. She saw her math teacher. She finally saw an acquaintance. Lu Xianxian had just let it slip. She and Li Ruolin had agreed not to make it public. "Teacher Lu, what nonsense are you talking about? Does she have to do something wrong to be called to the office by me?" Li Ruolin smiled and put her hand on Shi's shoulder. She patted her affectionately and said, "Student Yang Shi is the model student in our class. She is obedient, sensible, and smart. How could she do anything wrong?" "It's like this." Li Ruolin told Lu Xianxian about Shi's clothes being torn. "I took off the iron wire and threw it away. I don't know who left it there. Fortunately, it didn't hurt anyone." She didn't quite understand what a model student meant, but in context, she felt that Teacher Li was praising her. She was happy in her heart. "Hello, Teacher Lu." The little girl greeted obediently. Good. Lu Xianxian smiled and patted Shi's little head. "Don't worry, your Teacher Li will help you mend your clothes." "Okay." Shi's heart was filled with hope at this moment, and she responded sweetly. Li Ruolin took out a small needle and thread box from her drawer. She didn't know why she would put these things in the office, but now was not the time to think about it. There is no white thread, only black thread and red thread. Li Ruolin was a little embarrassed, but she didn't want to disappoint Shi. Suddenly, the paper card with a flower drawn on it that Shi showed her on Tuesday flashed through her mind, and she had an idea in her heart. Chapter 846. Huijia Primary School's curriculum arrangement was one of its major features. Unlike public schools, it had 4 classes in the morning and 2 classes in the afternoon. After 3:40 p.m., other primary schools had their last class. However, Huijia Primary School's curriculum was for interest classes from that time until school was over. Just like when Yang Yi came to Lanzhou for an inspection, Huijia Primary School paid particular attention to quality education for the children, and would not only focus on grades. Every child could choose their own interest classes from Monday to Friday according to their own interests. Huijia Primary School offered a wide variety of interest classes, from the more popular ones like singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, sports, chess, painting, and even more special ones like reading, reciting, debating, science, and so on. Huijia Primary School obviously invested a lot of manpower and resources in offering so many interest classes and hiring professional teachers to teach them. Of course, it was the first week of school, and the children were still making choices with their parents. Therefore, the interest classes were temporarily left to the children to do whatever they wanted in the classroom. Since there was nothing else to do, Li Rulan asked the students on duty to start working early and try to finish cleaning before school was over, so that they wouldn't have to stay after school. Yang Yi went to pick up Shi at 4:30 p.m. as scheduled. The little girl's mood seemed to have brightened up again. As soon as she saw her father, she couldn't wait to turn around and show her father the back of her clothes. "Papa, look, I have a little flower here." She showed it happily. It was a little flower sewn with a needle and thread. It had red petals and black leaves. The ratio was a little unique, but the design was clever and looked interesting. "Why is there a flower sewn on your school uniform?" Yang Yi asked in surprise. "Who sewed it for you?" "Teacher Li did it for me." The little girl turned around and pointed at the head teacher, Li Rulan, who was talking to other parents. She smiled sweetly and said, Because my clothes were torn, the teacher fixed it for me. There's also a little flower." The little girl liked the little flower. She turned left and right with a smile, as if she wanted to admire it from different angles. At this moment, Lan Xian, who had already understood the situation from Shi, added, "Yes, Shi tore her clothes. There's a big hole. When did you tear it? How did you tear it?" Yang Yi was more concerned about this. The little flower didn't matter. The question was, why did Shi's clothes tear? Shi blinked her big eyes, and her excitement dissipated a little. She felt her father's urgency, but the little girl seemed to have misunderstood. She thought that her father was going to blame her. She pouted slightly and whispered, Because I was sweeping the floor with little Fishy, and then I accidentally tore it." "Papa, don't be angry, okay?" The movement here attracted Li Rulan's attention. She was going to wait for Shi's parents to come over and explain to him. Now that she saw Yang Yi, she quickly walked over. After hearing Shi's words, Li Rulan subconsciously thought that Yang Yi had a bad temper. She quickly explained, "It's like this, Mr. Yang. Yang Yi's clothes accidentally hooked on a wire when she was on duty and cut a hole." When Yang Yi heard this, his reaction was similar to Li Rulan's. He squatted down and anxiously hugged his daughter's soft little body. He asked, Shi, other than your school uniform being torn, are there any other injuries on your body? Were you scratched? No, it's just that the school uniform was torn. Mr. Yang, I've checked it. Li Rulan said from the side. Shi also nodded. She looked at her father eagerly and muttered, Papa, don't be angry, okay? My clothes are all ready. Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. What are you thinking about? Why would Papa be angry with you? Papa is concerned about you. It doesn't matter if your clothes are torn, as long as you are fine. Look at such a big hole. Papa was almost scared to death by you. I was worried that you were injured too. In fact, when he heard she say that her clothes were torn, he thought that it was a school bullying incident. She was bullied, so he was a little angry. Papa, let me tell you, little Fishy and I don't know what to do. My clothes are torn. She didn't care so much. When she heard that her father didn't care about her clothes being torn, she was in a good mood. She happily hugged her father's neck and couldn't wait to tell her father how scared she was when her clothes were torn. Let's talk about this later when we get home. Yang Yi smiled and patted Shi's little head. He said, Should we thank Teacher Li? She helped you mend your clothes, and she even made them look so good. Li Ruolin listened from the side and quickly waved her hand. No, this is what I should do. Besides, it's also my negligence. I didn't take good care of the child. I didn't even know there was a wire. Yang Yi stood up with Shi in his arms. He smiled at her and said, Teacher Li, how can this be blamed on you? It's inevitable for children to get hurt. After suffering this once, I believe that she will be more careful in the future. But I still want to thank you for mending Shi's clothes. Thank you, Teacher Li. She snuggled in her father's arms and said sweetly under his small movements. Li Ruolin didn't expect Yang Yi to be so kind. When she saw Yang Yi's anxious look just now, her heart skipped a beat. She thought that she had met an unreasonable parent. This was just a small misunderstanding. It's nothing. This is what a teacher should do. Li Ruolin smiled. At around 9 o'clock in the evening, Li Ruolin and Lu Xianxian were preparing for class in the living room of their house. Being a teacher was a little tough. Teaching was only a part of the job. The few classes that they gave on the podium didn't even exceed half of their working time. Usually, they had to mark homework, prepare lesson plans, and organize meetings. If they were the head teacher, they had to take care of the children in the class, manage discipline, and a lot of other things. It was very common for people like them to continue preparing for class at night when they came back. Of course, Li Ruolin was very serious in preparing for class, but Lu Xianxian, the female hooligan, was a little half-hearted. She was seriously writing 2 words for a while, scratching her feet for a while, studying her nails for a while, and then taking out her phone to look at it. Micro-broadcasting. Wow. Lon, look, the clothes you sewed for Yang Shi in the afternoon. Suddenly, Lu Xianxian shouted, Yang Yi posted it on micro-broadcasting. Many people are praising you as a teacher. Li Ruolin curiously came over to take a look. Shi's family chef? This is Yang Yi's Weibo? Yes. You don't know, this guy is a gourmet who has been delayed by the entertainment industry. Lu Xianxian giggled. When did you follow him? Li Ruolin asked curiously as she looked at Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting. It's rare for us to have an interaction with a big star. Of course, we have to follow him. Micro-broadcasting's picture was a single school uniform photo. She had changed her clothes after returning home. Yang Yi probably took the photo before throwing the clothes into the washing machine. In the middle of the photo was the small flower she embroidered. In Li Ruolin's opinion, the stitches were still not strict and fine enough. It's a little embarrassing. Li Ruolin saw the tens of thousands of likes and thought with shame. Micro-broadcasting's text simply described the experience of the homeroom teacher mending Shi's clothes after she tore them. There were no other comments, as if Yang Yi was just casually describing a daily trivial matter. But in the comments, Li Ruolin received unanimous praise from her fans. Full of positive energy, I'm going to call this teacher like crazy. Are there more teachers like this? Please give me a dozen. Not only did she help sew the clothes, but she also skillfully embroidered a small flower. I suddenly feel that this teacher is too cute. She must like it very much, right? When my wife was in elementary school, I feel that I can rest assured knowing that she had such a good teacher to take care of her. Get lost upstairs, this is my wife. At this moment, Lu Xianxian, who was leaning close to Li Ruolin's face, suddenly laughed. She pointed to a comment on her phone and read it slyly, all of you can go and snatch Shi. Teacher, I'm going to take her away. Take her away. Take her away. Ah. The echo was made by Lu Xianxian herself. Li Ruolin didn't know what kind of joke wife was, but when she heard this sentence, her face couldn't help but turn red. She patted the female hooligan Lu Xianxian reproachfully. Of course, at this moment, Li Ruolin's heart was filled with joy and gratitude. This gratitude was for herself. In the past, she had always been good to the children secretly. At most, she would receive the gratitude of the parents and children like in the afternoon. But she had never received the recognition of so many people like tonight. It turned out that being a kind person and being gentle to the people and things in life could feel so good. Chapter 847. In the first half of the year, the variety shows that people were talking about were reality shows like The Limit Challenge. But in the second half of the year, the music variety show, China's Voice, which was a hidden talent show, became popular all over the country. Especially during the weekend, after the new episode of the show was broadcasted, all kinds of media reports about China's Voice sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. Some were positive, and some were negative. On the stage of China's Voice, the coaches would not ask about the past of the contestants, and the program team would not ask the contestants to fabricate their own stories. But they could not stop the enthusiasm of the media. In the eyes of the media reporters, these contestants who had finally made a name for themselves must have had a special past. And these pasts would definitely be breaking news. For example, when they dug into Thousand Miles Chuan Shu, they found out the connection between Thousand Miles Chuan Shu and Yang Yi. It became a hot topic, and Yang Yi had no choice but to come out and explain himself. In addition, Su Lu, who was on the same show as Thousand Miles Chuan Shu and also received the coaching fourth transition, was also dug up by the entertainment reporters. Although Su Lu was a bar singer before this, it was not a big news. After all, China's Voice's official website introduced Su Lu's past as a bar singer. However, with the characteristics of entertainment reporters, they would definitely not be willing to report this news in a plain and ordinary way. They did not know where they got a photo of Su Lu's red hair from before, but they made up a story about Su Lu hanging out in nightclubs. It had to be said that this kind of negative news had a great impact on the contestants themselves. Although China Star produced a lawyer's letter to warn them, the media retracted the report and officially apologized. But many fans who only read the first half of the article and did not read the second half had a bad impression of Su Lu. Even a few years later, some tabloid media purposely skirted around the edges, saying that Su Lu's image before her debut was not serious. Of course, if one wanted to develop in the entertainment industry, they would have to endure such open and covert attacks. As long as they became strong enough, like Yang Yi and Chen Yijie, they would not have to worry about the impact of these small media reports. Moreover, whether it was positive or negative, it was an important factor to maintain a high level of exposure. China's Voice was frequently reported, and the personal stories of the contestants were frequently exposed. Wasn't this a symbol of the popularity of the show and the popularity of the contestants? Some people couldn't even get such exposure even if they wanted it. The Great Travel Challenge had already aired a few episodes. As a travel reality show, it received a lot of attention when Xingyao Productions and Xiongnan TV Station announced the guest lineup. On the other hand, Xiongnan TV Station was a big producer of variety shows and had a wide audience base. Therefore, when the first episode was broadcast, the ratings of Travel Challenge were quite good. However, in the process of watching this show, many people subconsciously compared it to The Limit Challenge. They couldn't help but spit in their hearts, what kind of show is this? It had to be said that the location of The Great Travel Challenge was quite good. In the first episode of the French special, the opening shot was panned from afar to close-up. Every frame was beautiful and could be used as a computer desktop if cut out. However, with the appearance of the 6 fixed members, 3 men and 3 women, the quality of the program began to drop like an avalanche. Li Man could be considered to have a glib tongue, but she met a group of pig teammates. Especially that beauty from the popular girl group. She thought her answers were cute, but it was obvious that she was trying to act cute. Her fake baby voice was very stupid no matter how you looked at it. Yi Qing's personality was more impulsive, and her words often put everyone on the spot, so they could only rely on Li Man to smooth things over. Of course, Li Man herself wasn't any better. Her performance at the beginning was still quite normal. However, reality shows were filmed 24/7. Gradually, Li Man couldn't keep up the act. In some of her normal actions, her bossy attitude towards Chao Tsong was gradually revealed. No wonder Chao Tsong had a falling out with them. After watching this episode, the audience had a rough idea of what was going on. These people all have the temperament of a young master and a young miss. The more important part of the show was the Great Challenge. Of course, the traces of learning from the Limit Challenge were very obvious. However, Xingyao Productions still had a few tricks up their sleeves. Their game design was quite interesting. But the problem was that they chose the wrong members. At the beginning of the challenge, the popular little fresh meat kept complaining to the camera, and the beauty from the popular girl group acted coquettishly. Although the interaction with the director was also learning from the Limit Challenge, the problem was that after the interaction, they didn't fully participate in the game. One was lazier than the other, and one was stupider than the other. Even if they finally finished the task, the audience wasn't stupid. They had already started to complain on the internet. Isn't the traces of cheating too obvious? This passerby they asked for help. Are they sure it wasn't arranged by the director? That's right, after watching the first episode, the reputation of the Great Travel Challenge collapsed. Even if Xingyao Productions bought a water army and barely maintained its ratings, compared to the Limit Challenge, this show was far worse. The ratings of the second episode dropped by a third, and the ratings of the third episode were less than a third of the first episode. In response to the audience's complaints, Xingyao Productions' Luo Jinting stepped forward to explain, "Everyone, don't worry. From the sixth episode onwards, our show will have a huge change. Because after Chao Tsong quit, we invited a very important variety show big shot to join us." But the audience didn't buy it. They even left comments on Xingyao's micro-broadcasting. "Come on, we can only save the show if we replace the other 5 people besides Chao Tsong. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who Chao Tsong is replaced." Speaking of which, Chao Tsong is the only one among the 6 who dares to fight. She even worked hard to complete the tasks that affected her image as an idol. For example, she ate worms in exchange for money. If Chao Tsong is replaced, what's the point of this show? Even if we get a new variety show big shot, they'll probably be angered to death by the other 5. Without Chao Tsong, I'm very worried about whether they can still complete the tasks. Previous poster. Don't worry. Every time there's a crisis during the filming, a mysterious passerby will appear to save the world. No matter what, the Great Travel Challenge's reputation and viewership ratings were constantly slipping. Meanwhile, China's The Voice's popularity had pushed this reality show to the extreme of its decline. Li Man didn't know about this. She had just returned from filming Brazil's Jungle Station. She was so tired that she wanted to take a bath and sleep for a few days and nights. But her manager came looking for her the next day. Man, let me tell you, your new album might have to be delayed. It's best to release it next year, Ichi said. Why? Li Man asked in surprise. I'm getting a lot of attention now. Why should I wait until next year? By then, the Great Travel Challenge will be completely out of business. What am I going to release then? Li Man was a little agitated. Ichi smiled bitterly and said, "It can't be helped. During the few days when you went to film the show, Phoebe Studio, which is Yang Yi, announced that Murphy would be releasing an album at the end of November. If you release it in December, you'll definitely clash with her." No one wanted to release an album with Murphy. Yang Yi's creative ability was obvious to all. Murphy's singing ability was also known to everyone. If they were to clash with her, she was destined to steal the limelight. Li Man listened and was silent for a while. She gritted her teeth and said, "Why do they always clash with me?" At this moment, thousands of alpacas were running in her heart. Ichi smiled bitterly and didn't know how to answer. "We can release it earlier. Anyway, the album is ready. How about releasing it in October?" "I'll ask Xingyao Productions to free up my schedule," Li Man said angrily. Originally, when she released the album at the end of the year, she would have finished filming her variety show and could go all out to hit the charts. But now, if she released the album in October or November, it would conflict with the recording of The Great Travel Challenge. But Ichi shook her head and said, "The company's people analyzed that October is not suitable, because in October, Chan Yijie will release an album. This is his first Mandarin album. It is said that Yang Yi also wrote a few songs for him. You'd better not fight with him head-on." Yang Yi. Now Li Man was going crazy when she heard this name. Why is it him again? Li Manman's voice was squeezed out from her teeth, and her face was flustered and exasperated. Chapter 848. Brother Yang, what interest course did you choose for Shi? On Sunday morning, Lan Hao Kai brought Wu Jingjing and Lan Xin over for a visit. Boss Lan had just returned from Jinling City yesterday evening and was travel-worn. However, he couldn't sleep in because Lan Xin woke up early and was noisy early in the morning. The entire villa was restless. Lan Xin said she wanted to go to Shi's house to play. Coincidentally, Lan Hao Kai was also preparing to discuss with Yang Yi about the design of the amusement park. This time, he went to Jinling. Because of the country's opening policy, the officials of Wuqing County and Jinling City were still very enthusiastic towards him. Their efficiency was also much higher than before. It was probably only a matter of time before they bought the training island. Yang Yi also said that after they bought the training island, they would immediately start building the first park of the amusement park. However, building a house required a design, not to mention the more complicated design of the amusement park. It involved billions or even tens of billions of capital investment. Lan Hao Kai was very cautious about this. A normal design team definitely wouldn't do. Whether it was a domestic design team or a foreign design team, their qualifications had to be world-class. Of course, how to choose the design team, what the standards were, and how much the budget was needed. These issues all needed to be discussed slowly with Yang Yi. Lan Hao Kai wasn't in a hurry. Therefore, his main purpose for visiting Yang Yi's house today was to see what interest course Yang Yi had chosen for Shi. Last night, Wu Jingjing had shown him the list of interest courses offered by Huijia Primary School. He had a headache. She can choose whatever she wants. Yang Yi turned to look at Shi, who was playing with Lan Xin. He smiled and said, "However, I did tell her that although I won't interfere with her choice, she has to be responsible for her own choice. If she chooses a course, she has to study it well this semester." After Lan Hao Kai heard Yang Yi's actions, he smiled bitterly. "That's Shi. Do you know what our Xin said?" Her mother asked her, "Xin, what course do you want to choose?" She said, "Can I not choose? It's so tiring to go to class." If Lan Hao Kai didn't let Lan Xin choose, Lan Xin might not even be bothered to go to class. However, what Lan Hao Kai said made Murphy very happy. She smiled and said, "I thought Xin would ask if there's any good food?" "Hey, let's not talk about her. Murphy, what course did she choose?" "We also want to take a look," Wu Jingjing said with a smile. "She likes dancing, so she chose a dancing class on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And she likes drawing, so this class is on Thursdays. She also chose a reading class on Fridays. She said she likes reading," Murphy said as she counted with her fingers. In fact, she had a little misunderstanding about the reading class. The school arranged this interest class so that the teacher could take them to read children's books. There was an introduction on the directory of the interest classes. In the reading class, the teacher would guide the children to read profound prose or famous works. Of course, children of different ages would have different classes of difficulty. But even in the first grade reading class, there were only stacks of words with almost no illustrations. However, Yang Yi didn't tell Shi in detail. He thought that she could try a new challenge. And Chen Shiyun told Shi that she chose the shuttlecock kicking class, so Shi also chose one. "They will attend this class on Monday afternoon," Murphy said. "Xin definitely doesn't like dancing and shuttlecock kicking." Wu Jingjing shook her head. "But I think she can sign up for a reading class." Murphy smiled and said, "You can choose a vocal music class for Xin. Xin has a good voice. She is a good singer." Before Murphy finished her words, Lan Xin's loud screams and laughter came from the side. She wasn't in any danger. She was having fun with Shi and Tong Tong. The two girls were imitating Tong Tong in the castle. They crawled around the pillows, dolls, and other obstacles. Tong Tong was crawling and chasing after Sister Lan Xin who came to play with her. The little guy was laughing heartily, having a lot of fun as well. It had to be said that Tong Tong was very athletic. Although he didn't know how to walk, he could crawl very fast. He even knew how to twist his little butt and use his knees to increase his speed. Lan Xin was almost caught by Tong Tong just now. Little brother, don't keep chasing after Sister Xin. There's still me. She turned her head and found that she was left out. She giggled and shouted. The adults looked away from the children. Wu Jingjing nodded to Murphy and smiled. Learn to sing. That's a good idea. After chatting for a long time, Murphy went to the bathroom. Yang Yi brought out a plate of cut fruits from the kitchen and called Lan Xin and Shi to eat. Wu Jingjing played with her phone out of boredom. When Murphy came back, she heard Wu Jingjing laughing. She asked curiously, "What's so funny?" "Look at this news. It's about Yang Yi." Wu Jingjing took the phone and smiled. "They just found out that Yang Yi is a billionaire." "That's right." Wu Jingjing was looking at the news article written by Chen Dan from Metropolis Entertainment. The poor boy then became a billionaire now. Murphy didn't lose out by marrying him. The title of the article was very scary. Therefore, when Metropolis Entertainment's micro-broadcasting was published today, many web portals contacted and reposted it. "Let me have a look too." Hearing Wu Jingjing say that, Lan Hao Kai became interested. He took out his phone and asked Wu Jingjing to find it. He also started looking through it. In this article, Chen Dan started by using the year's hottest shows, The Limit Challenge and China's Voice, to attract people's attention. She exposed the fact that these two shows were not only designed by Yang Yi, but also produced by China Star Productions, which was solely owned by Yang Yi. Through China Star Productions, Yang Yi earned the biggest share of the profits after the two shows became popular. However, no one knew that when Yang Yi joined forces with Xingyao Productions to acquire China Star Productions, he spent nearly 100 million renminbi to acquire the original production team and other assets of China Star Productions. To be able to take out 100 million renminbi in liquid funds, and even take out 30 million renminbi to invest in the Children's Book Author Support Fund, to support the development of children's literature, Yang Yi is no longer the ordinary person who was thought to be incompatible with Murphy 2 years ago. He is also no longer the poor kid who lived in the slums that some reports dug up. It had to be said that Chen Dan had put in a lot of effort for this article. She counted in detail the books that Yang Yi had published, the movies that he had filmed, the songs that he had sold, and the copyrights that he had sold over the past few years. Combining it with some media reports, Chen Dan roughly calculated Yang Yi's current net worth. It's at least 600 million renminbi. Of course, it could be even more. Because China Star Productions' two shows are very popular now, if Yang Yi is willing to sell them, they would be worth at least 300 to 400 million renminbi. Of course, Yang Yi would not be so stupid as to sell off these two golden eggs. After reading the entire article, Murphy appeared very calm. On the other hand, after Lan Hao Kai glanced at the 600 million that Chen Dan had calculated in the end, he chuckled with a hint of mockery. "Why are you laughing like that?" Wu Jingjing asked, puzzled. Lan Hao Kai waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm laughing because this reporter thinks too highly of himself. He thinks that he has exposed some amazing news, but in reality, what he calculated is not even a fraction of Brother Yang's net worth. The money that Brother Yang has spent on that piece of land in Jinling City is already more than 600 million renminbi." Wu Jingjing was suddenly enlightened and said with a smile, "I know. If you include the shares of Sahara Online Mall, Yang Yi's net worth might scare them to death." "That's right. If Brother Yang reveals his net worth, he will definitely crush those young talents who are usually bragging about in the reports," Lan Hao Kai said, giving a thumbs up. "Don't mock me, you two. No matter how much net worth I have, it can't compare to Big Brother Lan. Besides, people are afraid of being famous just as pigs are fattened. We should keep a low profile and live a good life." Yang Yi smiled slightly. "I think so too. It's all the same whether you have a lot of money or not." Murphy said with the same tone as Yang Yi. Chapter 849. Not everyone knew about the relationship between Yang Yi and the Sahara Online Mall, as well as his relationship with the Backwave technology company behind microbroadcasting and the Mantis Shrimp Animation production company that he had a stake in. The equity distribution behind these technology companies was strictly confidential. Moreover, Yang Yi was a hands-off boss. Even in those companies, other than the higher-ups, few employees knew about Yang Yi's existence. Therefore, when most people saw Chen Dan's news, their reaction would not be as disdainful as Lan Hao Kai. Instead, they would be surprised. Chen Dan's report was reasonable and the readers could match it with their own memories. Yang Yi had indeed sold the copyrights, invested in these movies, and created these two programs. Therefore, they would basically agree with Chen Dan's judgment. Yang Yi had a net worth of almost 600 million yuan. Even if it was just a mere 600 million yuan, it was enough to shock many people. How amazing was this? In just 2 or 3 years, he went from a poor boy living in a shanty town to a billionaire with a net worth of 600 million yuan. This story was too inspirational. Under Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting, the fans were already boiling. They left messages and comments asking if Yang Yi had really earned so much. Of course, Yang Yi would not respond to these comments. However, even if he did not respond, the fans knew how amazing Yang Yi was. Their admiration for him increased day by day. You are indeed my favorite idol. When I see your deeds, I feel that my heart is full of positive energy. I feel that as long as I work as hard as you, I can get promoted and earn a lot of money. I can also marry a rich and beautiful woman one day. Relying on his own brain to make money. Although Yang Dada's qualifications are shallow, compared to others, he is definitely the person who earns the most from copyrights. I am now like Yang Yi. I don't have much savings. I work hard in the big city and live in a shanty town. However, I have a dream to be like Yang Yi. I believe that one day, I can also earn 600 million yuan. Of course, there were also very naughty fellows who called him father-in-law every day. They even kept up with the times and commented in a variety of ways, "I'm kneeling to father-in-law. You don't have to work so hard to earn money to buy a dowry for my wife. If I don't take it, I'll be looking down on you. If I take it, how embarrassing would that be?" Normally, such mantis shrimps would be beaten to death. Chen Dan's report on Yang Yi was an inspirational chicken soup for the soul for many people who wanted to embark on the path of creation. In the Wuhu district of Jiang City, Yu Ying also saw the report. Many women might be envious of Murphy's good luck. She started out as a stubborn stone and managed to discover a diamond mine with a limitless future. However, what Yu Ying paid attention to was the report on Yang Yi's journey to the pinnacle of his life. Yang Yi's success is like a fairy tale. Everything started from the midsummer 3 years ago. Jiang City was blooming with flowers and peach blossoms. Soldier's Assault quietly appeared on the Chiyue Literature Network. That was also the beginning of this legend. Yu Ying liked Chen Dan's description very much. It was a simple description, but it seemed to be magnificent, making people's hearts surge. He also started to succeed by writing books. Yu Ying thought to herself. She knew more about Yang Yi. For example, Yang Yi was actually the boss of Sahara Publishing House. She also knew a lot about Yang Yi's deeds when he started from scratch. However, every time she read it, Yu Ying could not help but feel encouraged. Can you be as successful as him? Yu Ying murmured softly as she caressed the manuscript in her hands. She had already finished writing and was just finishing up. She might be asking about the manuscript, or she might be asking about herself. But this was not important. What was important was that Yu Ying was eager to see herself succeed. If I succeed, it proves that I can also take care of Xiao Wei well by myself. Who would dare to laugh at me for being a single mother? Yu Ying's heart was ignited with an inexplicable flame. Women are independent. What's the use of having a man? Of course, Yu Ying was a woman after all. After a while, her thoughts became emotional again. If this book can be published. When I get the first month's money, I will resign and concentrate on writing at home to make more time to accompany Xiao Wei. Working and writing at the same time. I'm so tired. My dear, how true do you think this report is? He can earn hundreds of millions just by writing a few books and a few songs? On the big bed of a luxurious villa in the suburbs of Shanghai, Li Manman, who was wearing silk pajamas, pushed the man who was resting with his eyes closed beside her and asked softly. This man, who looked to be in his 50s, was obviously not as energetic as before. Li Manman was so bored that she played with her phone after work. Coincidentally, she also saw the news report about Yang Yi and couldn't help but cry out. The man took his glasses from the bedside and put them on. He squinted his eyes and looked at the report on the phone for a while. His movements were slow and leisurely. After taking off his glasses, he snorted softly and said, "What? You see that he has hundreds of millions and is young and handsome. You want to fall in love with someone else?" Li Manman's body trembled. She hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "What? It's not like you don't know. I hate him so much that I gnash my teeth. Isn't this because I can't bear to see him doing well? If one day he goes bankrupt and I see this kind of news, I'll really be happy. My dear, I only love you. Although you don't only love me," Li Manman said faintly after being intimate with the other party for a while. The man obviously didn't want to talk about the topic brought out by Li Manman. He raised his chin and motioned to Li Manman's phone. There's basically nothing wrong with what the report said. This surnamed Yang has a bit of standard. Global Pictures' Su Zhongwei also suffered a loss in his hands, but in the end, he still couldn't do anything to him. Old Jean, you say, how can he earn so much? I also know a few creators. Although they all have a bit of money, they can't earn as much as him. Li Manman said while drawing circles on the man's chest. Jean Yuanhe was the boss of Chu Han Management Company where Li Manman worked. Of course, Jean Yuanhe's main business was in real estate. Chu Han Management Company was just a cage that he bought to raise Li Manman, this canary. In this world, creators can earn more money than poor working stars like you. Of course, they don't have the limelight as you stars. Jean Yuanhe patted Li Manman's red face and humphed. Of course, there aren't many creators like Yang Yi, who wrote a few popular novels and filmed a successful movie. In addition, if you can make those 2 programs, you can also have a net worth of hundreds of millions. How can I do that? Li Manman charmingly smiled. She knew the man's mentality and deliberately showed weakness. I can only follow a capable man like you and drink some soup. Jean Yuanhe revealed a satisfied smile. It's good that you know. But you have to give me an idea. Recently, he provoked me again. I want to make him uncomfortable. Li Manman said coquettishly. Chapter 850. In the blink of an eye, it was already late September. It seemed to be an autumn rain. The next day, the weather in Zhongqing had already become cool. Yang Yi was already prepared. He called over Shi, who was actively putting on her socks, and asked her to put on the little suit jacket of her school uniform. Papa, there's a bow here. Shi grabbed a red ribbon and asked her father to tie it to her collar. Yang Yi had tried to put it on her once before, but the little girl was obsessed with it. She thought it would look better this way, so she wore it every day. However, Yang Yi liked Shi's little black suit jacket more. After putting it on, the little girl looked extraordinarily beautiful and elegant. Of course, if she didn't let her 2 little hands sway by her side like a duckling, her temperament would have been more gentle and quiet. Shi, I heard from Papa that you have an exam today, right? Murphy asked her daughter with concern as she sat on the sofa and pressed Tong's little but with one hand to prevent him from crawling away. Yes, we have an exam. She just remembered. She scratched her head and said in a daze. It was a unit test. However, the little girl obviously didn't have any special reaction to the exam. She even related the exam to her interview at Huejia Primary School and felt that it should be something as simple as that. Before she tried the exam, she was very nervous and flustered. However, after she tried it, she wasn't afraid anymore. Was the exam just chatting with the teacher? What was so difficult about that? Moreover, she didn't have the concept of exam results. She felt that exams were just exams, and the results didn't seem to have much of an impact. This might also have something to do with the special way Yang Yi and Murphy taught Shi. They never talked about the importance of exam results in front of Shi. Even though Cici had achieved very good results in the interview and received a very high evaluation from the invigilator, Yang Yi only played it down. At most, he simply praised her with a few words. Now that her mother had mentioned it, Cici, who was skipping to school to play with her friends, finally thought of the exam. Of course, she didn't become anxious. Then you have to work hard today. Murphy raised a palm and smiled. Come on, give me 5. Mom wishes you success. He. She smiled and ran over in her pink slippers. She reached out and patted her mother's palm. After her small hand clapped with her big hand, she asked happily, Mom, what do you mean by success? Oh, you have to ask your father about that. Murphy was embarrassed. She only knew how to use those idioms, but she didn't know how to explain them. Nervousness was actually contagious. Although she didn't take the exam seriously at home, when she arrived at school, she noticed that her classmates were a little uncomfortable. She couldn't help but become a little nervous. Lu Xiaoyu frowned worriedly. Usually, when the two girls met, they would talk about a lot of things. However, today, she sat there holding a pen and didn't seem to be in the mood to talk. Little Yu, why are you unhappy? She tilted her head and asked with concern. Because there's an exam today. It turned out that Lu Xiaoyu wasn't in the mood to talk. She was just too nervous. Now that she had started, she finally found an outlet to vent her emotions. I'm scared. Aya, what are you scared of? She asked, puzzled. I'm scared that if I don't do well in the exam, my father will be angry. Lu Xiaoyu pursed her lips and said softly, He will say, little you don't study hard and don't do well in the exam. Then he won't let me watch TV. He won't let you watch TV? She looked at her little friend in surprise. That's right, he used to be like this. Lu Xiaoyu pouted and nodded her head vigorously. Lu Xiaoyu's kindergarten education in the past did have exams. Therefore, Lu Xiaoyu had a deeper understanding of these things. When it came to exams, she became nervous. She looked at her little friend with concern. After a while, she thought of herself. If she didn't do well in the exam, would her father not let her watch TV? If that was the case, not being able to watch TV would be terrible. The little girl couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She sat in her seat and let her imagination run wild. After the morning reading class, Lu Xianxian walked into the classroom with a stack of test papers. She looked at Teacher Lu on the podium, who was calling for the group leaders of each group to come up and help distribute the test papers. This sense of urgency in her heart became more and more obvious. As a teacher, Lu Xianxian was relatively patient. She knew that many of the children were taking the exam for the first time. Therefore, she spent a long time explaining the process of the exam to them. In the end, she looked at the children below the podium, whose faces were tense. She smiled and said, Students, this is just a small unit test. These are all very simple questions. Don't be nervous. I don't want to take the exam. She heard Wang Lei not far from the seat in front of her. He was muttering in grievance. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. She was in a trance. It was as if she had returned to the day of the entrance exam. Many of her little friends were also crying. However, today was not so bad. Perhaps it was because they had grown up. Most of the students were just nervous. For example, Lan Xian was obviously much calmer. She didn't have the thought of crying like before. After the test papers were distributed, Teacher Lu Xianxian stood on the podium and read the questions to the children, afraid that they couldn't understand the words. Xixi also followed the teacher's reading and skimmed through the test paper in advance. It didn't seem difficult. There weren't many questions on the test paper. There were 8 major questions and 1 additional question. Basically, all of the questions were related to counting. For example, the first big question was to show a picture and ask the children to count the number of apples, bunnies, flowers, birds, goldfish, and so on. Then, fill in the corresponding numbers in the brackets behind the picture below. After all, Xixi and the others had only learned counting in the first unit. It hadn't been expanded to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. However, don't underestimate counting. This seemingly simple knowledge point could be given different difficulties and different logic by the teacher who came up with the questions. For example, the first few questions were simple counting and filling in the blanks. Later on, there were connecting questions, connecting different pictures with the same number together. There were also logical judgment questions and so on. The most difficult one was the additional question. It gave a picture of a boy, a girl, and different amounts of water left in the same cup next to them. The question was, the boy and the girl drank the same amount of water in a cup. With so much water left, who drank the most water just now? In the eyes of adults, this question should be very simple. As long as they understood the question correctly, they could solve it. However, for children who didn't know how to turn their brains, this question was a bit complicated. If they couldn't turn their brains around, many children might subconsciously choose the boy with the most water in the cup. However, these questions weren't difficult for Xixi and Lan Xin. These 2 girls, although they didn't learn 2 profound mathematical formulas when they were in Springfield kindergarten, under the guidance of the teacher, their logical thinking ability was trained and their brains turned faster. After teacher Lu Xianxian read the questions and finished reading the additional questions, Xixi thought of the answer. I know how to do it. I'll tell you. It's because Lily didn't have much water left. That's why Lily drank a lot. That's why she had so little water left. The little girl looked at the test paper and happily said to Lu Xiaoyu, who was next to her. Lu Xiaoyu looked at her deskmate in confusion. She didn't know if she still couldn't understand the solution Xixi told her or if she was confused by Xixi's operation. Could she tell others the answer? No, but Xixi didn't know anything about exam discipline. But coincidentally, Lu Xianxian was standing not far from Xixi's row. Chapter 851. After Lu Xianxian finished reading the questions, the classroom was relatively quiet except for some of the children. At this time, Xixi opened her mouth to speak. Her movements were more obvious and were caught by the teacher immediately. It was actually the genius girl with a pair of beautiful big eyes that no one could forget. When Lu Xianxian looked over, the little girl was still happily telling the answers to her deskmate. Of course, Lu Xianxian also heard that Xixi was indeed very smart. The answers she said were correct. However, passing the answers during the exam was cheating. Fortunately, Lu Xianxian also saw that Xixi didn't do it on purpose. Who would dare to speak so obviously when cheating? Cough cough. Lu Xianxian walked over and put her hand on Xixi's shoulder. She whispered, "Yang Xi, don't whisper to other students. During the exam, all the questions must be completed independently." Xixi looked up at the teacher in confusion. She didn't know that she had violated the rules. You can't tell others your answers like just now. Do you understand? Although Lu Xuanxuan's voice was still gentle, her expression was a little serious. At this time, an appropriate amount of seriousness could let Xixi realize the seriousness of the problem. Xixi finally understood. The little girl lowered her head in embarrassment and nodded gently. She pouted and said in a weak voice, "Teacher Lu, I know I was wrong. It's okay. You didn't understand the first time. Now that you know you were wrong, just don't do it in the future." Lu Xianxian put down her hand and wiped the seriousness on her face. She smiled and said, "Okay, go and do the questions." However, She realized that she had done something wrong this time. Although the teacher didn't continue to blame her, a heavy sense of guilt had already spread in her heart. During the exam, even though she was still looking at the paper seriously, her small hands still holding the pencil as she wrote the Arabic numerals stroke by stroke, it was obvious that her expression was not as excited and happy as before. The little girl frowned slightly. Her beautiful big eyes were filled with worry at this moment. The corners of her mouth were slightly downwards. It was hard to tell if she was feeling wronged or sad. What was interesting was that she who was frowning, was not alone. Many other children were also frowning like her, but they felt that the questions were difficult. There were even a few students who had a poor foundation in mathematics or were usually mischievous in class. When they flipped to the difficult problems at the back, they were confused and did not know how to solve them. They were so anxious that they scratched their ears and cheeks and looked left and right, wanting to see how others did it. Lu Xianxian walked behind Shi, knocked on the table in the next row, and warned softly, "Chen Yuxuan, you can't copy other people's answers." Lu Xuanxuan's tone was even harsher than before. She was also prescribing the right medicine for the problem. She was more obedient, and it was also her first offense, so she treated her gently. However, when it came to Chan Yuxuan and the other boys who were usually more mischievous and thick-skinned, Lu Xuanxuan's tone was much harsher. She subconsciously looked back and just happened to see Chan Yuxuan withdraw his gaze from her paper. Sure enough, he was thick-skinned. This little boy didn't have any sense of guilt like Cici after being scolded by the teacher. He just lowered his head regretfully. He regretted that he didn't see Cici's answer clearly just now. "It's okay, just ignore him." Lu Xianxian recovered her gentleness. She smiled and asked Shi to turn her head back. She said, "Continue to do the questions. Just cover the paper properly." Shi's mood at school was very complicated. She blamed herself, felt wronged, and felt sad. At this moment, in the studio's recording studio, Murphy's mood was not much better. Today, Yang Yi took out 3 songs prepared for her new album, 12 songs, so it was better to take them out one by one. But when she looked at the lyrics, Murphy felt very sad. The first song was, "He Doesn't Love Me." Yes, it was the song that Imo Wanwei sang while laughing and crying at her solo concert in a very popular video in Yang Yi's previous life. "He doesn't love me. When we hold hands, he is too cold. When we hug, we don't get close enough." This song was considered by many as the best lovelorn song. Every line of the lyrics was full of sadness. Murphy was an extremely emotional person. Looking at these lines of lyrics, a fictitious scene emerged in her mind one after another. Yang Yi and her relationship gradually drifted apart. Originally, they held hands, hugged, and kissed intimately every day, but now, they became less and less intimate. The second song was, "The Most Familiar Stranger." In Yang Yi's previous life, this song was the same as, "He Doesn't Love Me." Although it was released at the end of the last century, it was popular regardless of era and age. Even after 20 years, it was still widely sung. That popularity even gave people the misconception that it had only been a few years since it became popular. The lyrics of this song were also sad. Compared with, "He Doesn't Love Me," the way it expressed its feelings was different. It was not as direct, bitter, and strong as the lyrics of, "He Doesn't Love Me." What it expressed was a kind of cold pain. We have become the most familiar strangers in the world. In the future, we will have our own twists and turns, and each of us will be sad. Because they had loved each other deeply, they were the most familiar with each other. But because they did not contact each other after breaking up, even if they were the most familiar with each other, they were just strangers. From now on, we will not have any contact with each other. No matter who is brilliant, who is decadent, it has nothing to do with you. It was hard to tell whether this song was written about heartlessness or the hidden reluctance behind the heartlessness. It was so cold that it made people tremble, but the sweetness that could be associated with it was also heart-wrenching. When Mo Fei saw these lyrics, she couldn't help but imagine some of these scenes. Corresponding to the love between her and Yang Yi at this moment, when she thought of the separation that would happen, the discomfort in her heart was like the shackles of a volcano being torn apart. erupting all at once. In the past, when Yang Yi had taken out Listen to the Sea, Murphy had not been as sad as she was now, so Yang Yi had not yet realized the impact of his two songs. He even said to Murphy with interest, "My favorite is still The Most Familiar Stranger. It is very interesting when played with the saxophone. Let me play it for you." Yang Yi took the saxophone from the instrument rack next to him and began to play. This was a slow lyric song. The saxophone did not play much in the original accompaniment. It only appeared for a moment in the prelude. Of course, that short part was amazing enough. However, this song was originally suitable for playing with the saxophone. Yang Yi had even dug out the complete saxophone score. Mo Fei opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but stopped on second thought. She looked at Yang Yi, who was playing enthusiastically, and the look in her eyes was a little gloomy, and her mouth was slightly pursed. Her expression was exactly the same as Cece's. After all, the power of genes was limitless. However, since they were both biological children, Tong Tong was not as sentimental as his mother. Listening to his father play the saxophone, Tong Tong was not affected by the melancholy and sad music at all. Not only did he not feel sad, but the little boy even grabbed the railing of the crib and excitedly climbed up. Although he could not stand steadily, when he saw his father shaking his head and winking at him, he also beamed with joy. The atmosphere in the recording studio was very strange. Tong Tong's father was also affected. The two of them were silly and seemed to be very happy. On the other hand, the atmosphere on Murphy's side was a little gloomy and oppressive. Chapter 852. There were people who used phrases like deep and calm, soft and sad, and like an echo in the night, to describe the characteristics of the saxophone. The emotions contained in The Most Familiar Stranger seemed to be squashed and elongated under the saxophone's performance. It was like silk, entangling people's hearts. Although Yang Yi played the saxophone to tease his son at the beginning, he couldn't bear to blaspheme this piece of music, so he continued to play it affectionately. Especially when he played the line, each sorrowful, he used a long, continuous trill to raise the pitch like an electric current, as if it could penetrate people's souls. Murphy closed her eyes and immersed herself in the sad music of the saxophone. But even with her eyes closed, she couldn't suppress her bursting emotions. 2 lines of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. Yang Yi had just stood up from the wind and turned his head around when he saw this scene. "What's going on? Why is she crying?" Yang Yi immediately stopped playing, and the saxophone's voice stopped abruptly. Instead, he asked with concern, "Honey, what's wrong? Why are you crying all of a sudden? Don't tell me you were moved by the song I played?" Yang Yi joked. "Did I play it that well? I'm not good at this kind of thing." Murphy rubbed her eyes and looked at the guy who didn't understand her feelings. She sat there sullenly. Her creased eyebrows, wrinkled nose, and slightly puffed pink cheeks were written all over her face. "I'm very sad, and I'm waiting for you to comfort me." Of course, Yang Yi could roughly guess the source of Murphy's emotions. He put down the saxophone and sat on the coffee table in front of Murphy. He looked at her and smiled gently. "Didn't I tell you that these songs were just my imagination? Don't think too much about it, okay? They don't express my true feelings. They're just emotions that I created out of thin air to write sad songs." How could Murphy not understand this? It wasn't as if Murphy didn't know if Yang Yi had a change of heart. However, she was a woman who needed a sense of security when it came to relationships. She couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. She pursed her lips and said with a nasal voice, "I know. It's just that when I read these lyrics, I can't help but think of a lot of messy things." "What nonsense?" Yang Yi asked. "It's like you fell in love with someone else. Just like what you wrote in this song, I don't know when it started, but you didn't love me anymore," Murphy said. Her heart ached and her eyes turned red again. Yang Yi's heart ached when he saw this. He simply sat beside Murphy and pulled her into his arms. She straddled his thighs. The two of them faced each other and were even closer to each other. Murphy's face turned red from Yang Yi's teasing. Not to mention that she didn't know where the bad feelings from before disappeared. She turned her head to look at Tong Tong, who was in the crib. Tong Tong was staring at them with wide eyes. Although the sofa armrest blocked some of her view, Murphy was still a little embarrassed. "Our son is watching," Murphy said shyly. "Don't worry about him." Yang-yi reached out and pinched Murphy's nose. He laughed and said, "Look at you. You can make yourself look so embarrassed by letting your imagination run wild. Aren't you a big idiot? Say it yourself. You're still bullying me." Murphy realized that she couldn't persuade Yang-yi, so she didn't care anymore. She revealed her true nature and cried out with an aggrieved expression. "When did I bully you?" Yang-yi laughed. "You pinched my nose," Murphy said angrily. "I didn't even use any strength. I just pinched it lightly. How can that be called pinching?" "I don't care. Usually, when you feel sorry for me, you kiss me. Why would you pinch me?" "Ugh." Murphy couldn't say anything else. After a while, she was finally released. Her lips were red and translucent, and her face was as red as snow. Although she was still glaring at Yang-yi angrily, her eyes, which were filled with both joy and anger, seemed to be about to burst with charm. "Don't let your imagination run wild. We're fine." Yang-yi hugged Murphy and let her head rest on his chest. His lips were warm for a while before he spoke slowly. "Then what about in the future?" Murphy was still affected by her imagination and muttered softly, "Of course we'll continue to be fine. Writing songs is just writing songs. It has nothing to do with reality." Yang-yi said softly. After getting the answer she wanted, Murphy's head rubbed against Yang-yi's chest and didn't say anything. "Let me read you a poem. Do you remember the last time I told you about forcing myself to say my worries for a new poem?" Yang-yi asked with a smile. "I don't remember," Murphy replied softly. "This is a poem written by an ancient person called Xin Chiji. The full text is like this. Young people don't know the taste of worries. Love to go up the stairs. Forcing myself to say my worries for a new poem." Yang-yi recited with a cadence. You seem to have read one more line." Murphy sat up and said doubtfully, "No, the poem is like this. There's another line below. Now I know the taste of worries. Wanting to say it, but not wanting to say it. Wanting to say it, but not wanting to say it's cold autumn." Yang-yi said while shaking his head. Murphy couldn't help but chuckle. Cold autumn, this sentence sounds so casual. It's like talking. That's right. What this poem wants to say is that when you were young, you didn't know what worries were. You liked to go to the top of a tall building and look into the distance, as if you could understand the taste of worries. And when you go to the top and look into the distance, you don't know how to worry. In order to write a good work, you can force yourself to say that you're worried. Now that you've tasted the taste of worries, you can't say it even if you want to. You can only say it's cold autumn. It's like saying normal words. There's no rhyme at all. Yang-yi interpreted a bunch of words before looking into Murphy's eyes with a smile and said softly, "The songs I'm writing now are originally to forcefully describe this kind of sad emotion. But just like this poem said, if a person really reaches this sad moment, I'm afraid they won't be able to write a work to express this emotion." "I understand. I'm just a little affected by the emotions of these songs. I suddenly feel sad in my heart." Murphy grabbed Yang-yi's hand and said with her head down, "But now that I'm by your side, I know that I didn't lose you. I'm very happy. I know that it's not like that." Dang dang dang. The sound next to them interrupted Yang-yi and Murphy's thoughts. They turned their heads to look. At the crib, Tong Tong saw that his parents were ignoring him, so he was too lazy to continue looking. The little guy grabbed the toy in the crib, the plastic forklift that he liked, and rhythmically knocked on the crib's guardrail. It was as if he was about to break out of prison. Yang-yi and Murphy retracted their gazes and looked at each other with a smile. Murphy also got down from Yang-yi's lap and went to take care of her little son. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.